The smell of damp earth and smoke clings to the woolen cloak draped over my shoulders as I walk through the village gate. The thatched roof of our hut is just visible above the rows of mud-walled houses, its patchwork repairs testament to last winter's flood. I step inside, kicking off my clogs on the worn threshold. The air within is thick with the scent of baking bread and simmering stew. Mother Ilera, a stout woman with arms like tree trunks, kneads dough on our wooden table while her daughter, a tiny thing named Alice, watches from beneath her mother's apron. What if your hands grew tired more easily than mine? What if you couldn't make the stitches hold in your own woolen garments? What if your stomach churned with hunger every morning? If you're listening to this to fall asleep, that's exactly why I make these. Drop a comment and tell me where you are and what time it is. I read every single one. I lift Alice onto my hip, adjusting the weight of her small form as we head out into the yard to fetch more firewood from the shed. The dampness on your skin seeps into your bones as you stand outside the small cottage, breathing in the morning air thick with wood smoke and dew-kissed grass. The sky above is a pale blue, not yet awake from its night's slumber, but the world around you stirs. You can hear the distant clucking of chickens, their soft murmurs rising like mist on a winter's day. As you step inside, your feet sink into the cool mud that lines the doorframe. The cottage is warm and dark, lit only by a single candle placed precariously near the threshold. The flame casts flickering shadows on the walls, making it seem as though the spirits of old have taken up residence within these humble stones. You make your way to the hearth, where a kettle hangs suspended over the dying embers of last night's fire. Water still clings to its metal sides in stubborn rivulets, a testament to the morning's chill. As you reach for it, your hand brushes against the worn handle, and you feel the familiar weight of the thing that is always there, the constant reminder of another day's needs. The water inside the kettle has grown lukewarm during its night-long slumber, but it will have to suffice. You pour some into a wooden cup, feeling the rough texture of the wood beneath your fingers as you cradle it in your hands. The taste is stale and slightly bitter, much like your own mood this morning. You take a moment to wash your face with cold water from the nearby bucket, wiping away the remnants of last night's exhaustion. Your eyes feel gritty and the skin around them seems tight, but at least you're awake now. You glance out the window, watching as sunlight begins its slow creep across the landscape. Your stomach growls in anticipation of breakfast, reminding you that it's time to start preparing today's meal. The fire needs rekindling, and the embers from last night's supper will have to do. You rummage through the storage chest for some dry kindling, your hands closing around a rough-hewn wooden spoon instead. As you continue searching, memories begin to resurface, fragments of meals past, conversations with fellow villagers, and the countless times you've had to tend this very same fire. The scent of baking bread wafts from the nearby oven, carried on the gentle morning breeze that seeps through cracks in the walls. A faint hum begins to build within your chest as you remember yesterday's events, tending to the vegetable patch until dusk, then walking back home under a sky painted with hues of pink and gold. You recall arguing with your husband about whose turn it was to fetch water from the well, an argument that ended without resolution but still left its mark on the day. Your thoughts drift further back in time as you ponder what lies ahead for today's tasks. making sure the livestock is fed, checking the state of the grain stores, and perhaps even visiting your sister who lives just over the hill. The list seems endless, much like the hours that stretch before you like a canvas waiting to be filled. As morning slowly gives way to midday, shadows from outside begin to creep across the floor once more. You find yourself lost in thought as you stir the embers into life with your trusty spoon, watching how they react to each new addition of kindling, flames dancing upwards before settling back into a gentle warmth that seems almost comfortable. Time passes without much notice as your mind wanders through memories and tasks alike. It's not until you glance down at the food spread out on the table in front of you that reality snaps back into focus. A meager but satisfying meal is ready to be eaten, porridge made from leftover oats, some stale bread for tearing apart with your hands. You take a seat beside your husband as he leans forward, intent on breaking his own slice of bread. Your fingers intertwine with his under the tablecloth's rough weave. It's an unconscious gesture that speaks volumes about shared routines and quiet understanding between you both. Your stomach growls louder now, reminding you to eat before tending to other tasks. You raise a spoonful of porridge towards your lips as morning sunbeams creep through the windows, golden light spilling across the room like it's pouring its very essence into this moment. With each passing instant, shadows on the walls grow longer and darker. They seem to move with you as you eat, an unsettling reminder that time keeps moving forward whether we acknowledge it or not. As I sit here in this dimly lit cottage, my stomach growls with anticipation, reminding me that it's been far too long since our last meal. The bread on the table is stale and dry, but at least it's better than nothing. My husband Godric has promised to bring home some fresh meat from the hunt today, but I'm not holding out much hope. I try to distract myself by glancing around the room, taking in the familiar sights of our humble abode. The fire crackles and spits in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the space. Our children's toys are scattered about, reminding me that we're far from alone here, though it often feels like it when Godric is away. The windows, those lovely windows I've grown to cherish, let in a sliver of sunlight and a whisper of the world outside. It's moments like these that I'm reminded of how small our lives are, yet connected they remain to the larger tapestry of existence. As I sit here lost in thought, my gaze falls upon the old wooden bowl on the table before me. It's been passed down through generations of women in my family, a symbol of our roles as caregivers and nurturers. The scratches and scuffs that mar its surface are testaments to countless meals shared around this very table. I reach out a trembling hand, tracing the patterns etched into the wood with my finger. My mind begins to wander back to the last meal I ate before. Before what? Before Godric left for his hunt. Before our children were born. Before life became so overwhelming that it's hard to pinpoint exactly when things started unraveling. The memories come flooding back, like water bursting through a breached dam. The day we moved into this cottage with its crooked roof and creaky floorboards, the first time I saw Godric, his calloused hands holding my own as he vowed to protect me and our future family. Those moments are forever etched in my mind like the creases on an old map. But there's another memory, one that comes less frequently but feels more tangible, the last thing I ate before all of this. Bread, yes, but it was fresh from the oven then. Soft and warm between my fingers, its aroma wafting up to mingle with the scent of roasting meat on the fire. I remember feeling grateful for this life we'd built together. Now, as I stare at that old wooden bowl, a pang of hunger strikes me anew. Not just physical hunger, though I'm starving by now, but an emotional yearning. For what? Warmth, comfort, peace. The fleeting moments when everything seemed perfect. I take a deep breath and push the memories aside, focusing on the task at hand, preparing for another day without Godric's steady presence to guide us through its trials. How do people endure this life, constantly struggling from one meal to the next, battling against time itself? As I break off a piece of stale bread from the loaf on the table and try to tear it into edible bits, my thoughts wander back to those shadows that creep across our walls with each passing minute. They seem to grow longer and darker, their presence both ominous and inevitable, an unsettling reminder that no matter what we do or how hard we strive, time keeps moving forward. Godric's promise of fresh meat for dinner still lingers in my mind like a beacon of hope, but I'm not sure if it'll ever materialize. We've been lucky before. He brought back rabbits and even the occasional deer when our luck was running high. But today, who knows? With each passing moment, the shadows deepen, claiming more space on the walls as their own. They seem to seep into every crevice of this little cottage, a constant reminder that we're not in control here, time is. And yet I'll get through another day somehow. We always do. How else would anyone survive this relentless march forward? The acrid scent of dried dung and wood smoke wafts through the air as you stand outside your cottage, gazing out upon the muddy courtyard. The sky above is a deep shade of gray, promising rain to come later in the day. You can feel the dampness seeping into your skin, chilling you to the bone. As you breathe in, the smell of last night's supper, stale bread and boiled vegetables, clings to the back of your throat. The fire from yesterday has long since gone out, leaving only a faint smudge on the hearthstone. You can almost taste the disappointment that comes with knowing another meal will have to be scavenged or cooked over an open flame. The creaking gate and murmur of conversation from the neighboring cottage are the only sounds breaking the silence. Your neighbor's wife, Godova, is busy preparing breakfast while her children chase each other around the courtyard, their laughter carrying on the wind. You nod in greeting as you make your way towards the small wooden bucket slung over your arm. Inside, the air is thick with the stench of yesterday's laundry, a mix of sweat and lye that clings to everything it touches. Your hands are already sore from last night's task of scrubbing floors with sand and water, but you know today won't be any easier. The bucket contains a mixture of dried herbs, mud, and who knows what else your mother-in-law has concocted as medicine for the coming winter illnesses. As you approach the fire pit in the center of the room, the warmth from last night's embers greets you like an old friend. You can feel its gentle heat seeping into your chilled bones, and for a moment all seems right with the world. The air inside is stale, but at least it smells better than outside. Your mother-in-law, Hilda, looks up from her task of kneading dough on the wooden table. Her eyes are lined with fatigue, and you can see the weight of responsibility bearing down upon her shoulders. Ah, good morrow, she says, not looking up as she speaks. I was just making a batch of salve for your husband's skin condition. You nod in understanding, knowing that this is more than just a task. It's an art form passed down through generations of women in your family. The recipe has been tweaked and adjusted over the years to accommodate whatever local ingredients are available at any given time. The bucket contains a dark, almost black paste made from mud gathered from the nearby stream mixed with what looks like dried human waste, some herbs you don't recognize, and a small amount of rendered fat from last year's pig. You can feel your stomach turn as you realize this is indeed the source of their medicine. Night soil, they call it in the village. You are about to ask Hilda where she obtained such an unusual ingredient when Godiva bursts into the cottage, her arms laden with fresh firewood and kindling for today's breakfast. The sound of splintering wood and scraping chairs fills the room as everyone gathers around the table to prepare for another long day. The air is thickening now, not just from the smell, but also from the anticipation that hangs heavy in every breath taken by those gathered here. It's a quiet unease, one you're familiar with after months of struggling through each passing season on dwindling resources and endless labor. Hilda looks at Godiva as she lays down her firewood bundle and begins to arrange it for kindling. "You'll be needing that salve, won't you?" Hilda says, a hint of accusation creeping into her voice. Godiva's expression falters momentarily before she nods curtly. "I thank you," she replies, avoiding eye contact with the rest of the group as she continues to arrange kindling around the small hearthstone. You notice that Godiva seems particularly somber today, a look on her face you've seen many times in your own reflection. For a few moments, the fire crackles and spits as everyone focuses on their task at hand. The salve-making begins once more, with Hilda expertly stirring the mixture of night soil and herbs over an open flame while Godiva adds kindling to the growing fire. You're tasked with helping Godiva gather water from a nearby barrel for this morning's porridge. The cold, rain-soaked bucket is still clutched in your hand as you make your way back into the kitchen, but now it feels more like an afterthought than anything else. Your focus shifts to how quickly you can get today started. Every passing moment seems to bring with it another obstacle or challenge waiting patiently in line. The sound of Hilda's spoon scraping against the side of her cauldron brings your attention back to the room, and for a brief instant, all is forgotten except for the task at hand. You're drawn into their world once more as you watch them carefully mixing the ingredients together, each stir a calculated dance between old knowledge passed down through generations and whatever scraps have been gathered from last night's supper. Time seems to slow down now that everyone has fallen back into routine, but it's an illusion born of familiarity rather than any true reprieve. The hours ahead are going to be just as grueling as the ones before. Another cycle of chores, meals, and endless scrubbing at surfaces until they shine with a cleanliness impossible in this world. The sun outside is just starting its slow climb above the horizon when Hilda hands you a small wooden bowl filled with their latest concoction. "Here," she says softly, "give it to your husband. He might need something extra for his skin today." As you take the bowl from her, a faint memory stirs in the recesses of your mind, one you can't quite grasp but is tied somehow to this night soil mixture and all its secrets. And with that thought, like every other day before it, begins another cycle of life amidst mud, sweat, and endless scrubbing. As you take another swig from your wooden cup, the bitter taste of the night soil mixture lingers on your tongue. You've grown accustomed to it over time, but that doesn't mean you like it any better than when you first started drinking it as a child. Your mother used to say it was good for what ails you, and by what ails, she meant every sickness from the sniffles to the fever. You glance around at your fellow villagers, their faces etched with exhaustion, their movements slow and deliberate. The night soil mixture is just one part of our daily lives. We all drink it every morning without fail. It's what keeps us healthy, or so they say. You've never known a time when you didn't have the brew in your belly. The village elder approaches, her eyes lined with age and worry. She hands you a small pouch made from animal hide. Your turn, she says gruffly, not meeting your gaze. Inside the pouch is another dose of the mixture, enough for 3 days, maybe more if you're careful. You nod in acknowledgement and take it from her. As you walk back to your hut, the early morning sun casts long shadows across the ground. The air's crisp with dew, a welcome change from the humid night before. But even as you breathe in deeply, feeling the coolness fill your lungs, you can't shake off the nagging sense that something is amiss. You remember fragments of conversations overheard around the village square, whispers about someone falling ill after drinking the mixture too regularly. They said it was just a rumor, but the image lingers. A child with a pale complexion, skin sallow and eyes sunken. You try to push the thought away, focusing on your daily routine instead. Your day's schedule is predictable as ever: help with the crops in the morning, then move on to helping with laundry. The night soil mixture helps keep us healthy, but it doesn't protect against every illness. And when you or one of your family members falls ill, well, let's just say we've learned to be resourceful. After finishing up your chores for the day, you take a moment to sit by yourself near the village well. The air is thick with the smell of manure and damp earth, not pleasant, but familiar nonetheless. You watch as people hurry past, going about their business without so much as glancing in your direction. It's an unspoken rule here. We don't ask questions or seek comfort. Instead, we keep our heads down and get on with the task at hand. As you sit there, lost in thought, a faint memory stirs again, that elusive connection to this night soil mixture which still refuses to reveal itself fully. You try to capture it, but like chasing after a wispy cloud, it vanishes before you can grasp anything substantial. The day wears on, the sun beats down relentlessly, sucking what little moisture remains from your skin. Sweat drips into your eyes as you scrub away at yet another batch of clothes, dirty rags that reek of human waste and desperation. But we persevere because there's no other choice in our lives here. The villagers rely on each other for survival. The only way to get ahead is by keeping pace with those around us. You finish up your chores just as dusk falls over the village, casting long shadows across everything it touches. In this eerie twilight period before nightfall, you help gather more of that precious substance, a liquid gold hidden beneath our own waste and excrement. We know its true worth when harvest time comes, then we reap what our labor has sown. But tonight's task is different, sorting through human waste in the open fields to separate it into usable compost versus waste for fertilizer. A job that reeks more than any other, yet holds secrets of life itself within every scrap and piece of dirt. The air clings to your skin like damp wool, heavy with the scent of decaying vegetables and yesterday's fires. The smell lingers long after breakfast, a constant reminder that you're still in this small world where waste accumulates. You breathe it in as you scrub last night's pots and pans clean by the well. The water is icy cold, but at least it's running today. Yesterday, the pump broke again, and you had to fetch buckets from the nearby stream. That was an extra hour tacked onto your already long morning of chores. The ice on your fingers makes the handles slippery as you lift the heavy cauldron out of the well. You pour in some cold water from a bucket to temper it before adding hot broth, trying not to splash any on the rough stone floor. A few drops fall anyway, making the surface slicker than usual. You've got to be careful. One wrong step and you'll end up with scalded feet like last week. The steam rising off your hands makes a thin fog around your face as you hold each piece in place with tongs to avoid getting burned. Your skin prickles from the chill, but at least it's dry air tonight, no rain for days, which is good news for anyone trying to make hay or fix thatched roofs. Once the pots are clean and put away, you get started on today's tasks. Fetching more water from the stream since the well's still out of commission, then starting dinner preparations. The afternoon sun beats down on your back as you walk along the riverbank, feeling its warmth seep into your clothes but doing little to chase off the chill in your bones. You know this routine so intimately now that it feels like a second skin, tired muscles and all. There's no need for lists or reminders. Every action has become an ingrained habit. Your eyes scan ahead for the best spots where you can scoop up water without having to wade too deep, watching out for slippery stones beneath. At one point, you stop to examine some new growth on a nearby willow branch, just sprouts really, but promising signs of spring nonetheless. You tuck a small wooden pin into your cap as a token. It's not much, but it'll do until the real gardening begins in earnest soon enough. The water buckets start weighing heavier than they used to when you're carrying them back from the stream. A faint ache has developed between your shoulder blades by now, just another reminder that winter is over and summer will be here all too quickly, bringing its own set of worries like ripening crops and harvests gone wrong. Eventually, after the chores are done and supper's simmering on the fire, you take a seat next to it, letting the gentle warmth ease your tired muscles. Smoke curls up towards the eaves as you watch it carry off into thin air. Your gaze follows it for a while before shifting back down to focus on what lies within arm's reach. There are some old wooden crates near the fire that were meant for storing tools but ended up getting used for holding kindling, their labels long since faded away by weather and use. They have an odd smell, almost like damp earth mixed with tar from the roof repairs last autumn, a bit pungent at first but calming once you get accustomed to it. The creak of old wood sounds out as one of these crates shifts in response to your shifting weight, making you glance down at it briefly. Its corners are worn smooth by years of being moved and used for various purposes. That's what happens when things become integral to daily life. They take on a patina all their own. The interior is dimly lit now as night begins to fall outside, the world slowly fading into darkness while you're stuck here by the fire. Shadows creep across walls and into corners as if trying to reclaim space. A faint rustle starts coming from that same crate, its old rags and whatnot shifting around inside. As you sit there watching it settle back down, just an ordinary evening sound really, but somehow soothing in its quietness, your mind begins wondering about the contents of this particular box. What would be inside such a well-worn container? Probably scraps from who knows when old rags, bits of torn fabric, perhaps some forgotten tools, or maybe even remnants from meals past. You lean over to investigate more closely now that it's caught your interest. The fire casts flickering shadows on the walls as you peer into its depths. Your face inches away, you can smell dampness and a hint of mold, musty scents like old books or forgotten corners in the attic. The crate's contents are mostly just random bits. Rags, some torn cloth, an odd wooden spoon with worn handle that looks like it might be useful someday but isn't now. A rusted metal lid lies on top, and you wonder what could have been inside to make such a big deal about storing things away, except for this little cistern. It's a reminder of the small mysteries in life, old mysterious things left behind by those who came before, the stories they whisper when we're not listening closely enough. In another time and place, someone might have used that lid to scoop water from some ancient well or spring, its metal worn like your boots are now. But this isn't about a grand adventure, it's just what happens around here. Finding scraps of history in the everyday, forgotten things waiting patiently for their moment to be rediscovered. The fire crackles on as you sit back down next to it, watching shadows dance across the walls and wondering if anyone else has ever thought about these small stories hidden within worn wooden crates. You breathe deeply into this quiet evening air filled with scents of smoke and damp earth, trying not to think too much but letting your mind wander a bit. As you exhale slowly, your gaze drifts towards the wooden chest in the corner, partially hidden by the shadows cast by the fire pit's flickering flames. The stories within its worn slats seem to whisper secrets only known to the creaking of old wood and the whispers of forgotten tales. You try not to think about those stories now, focusing instead on the rhythmic crackle of the embers as they surrender their heat back into the night. Your thoughts begin to wander, drifting like autumn leaves carried by an unseen breeze through your family's small cottage. The darkness outside seems almost palpable, a presence that presses against the wooden shutters and door frame, reminding you that there is more beyond this tiny world of yours. In this moment of quiet contemplation, it feels as though you're suspended between worlds, one foot rooted in the familiar routines of your life as a wife and daughter-in-law to the local blacksmith, the other foot straining towards something else. Your breathing gradually slows further, becoming almost imperceptible as your mind tries to grasp at elusive threads of thought. It's not quite daydreaming, more like allowing yourself to drift on the tide of memories that surface with each passing moment. You think about the recent harvest festival and how it felt to dance under the stars alongside other villagers from across the valley. There was a particular song, one your sister-in-law sang with such enthusiasm and laughter that even you couldn't help but smile along. The memory takes on a life of its own as you recall the taste of fresh bread straight from the oven, the smell of which still lingers in your nostrils. It's been days since it was baked, yet it feels more immediate than yesterday morning when you helped with the kneading. Life in these small villages can be a patchwork of seasons and activities. One day you're tending to the garden, the next helping at the smithy. The flickering light from the fire dances across your face as if drawn by an invisible hand, illuminating lines on your palm that deepen with each passing year. It's been years since you first came here, a young bride from a neighboring village, full of hope and dreams for the future. Some have said you're not quite suited to this life, too curious, too given to daydreaming. But there's something about being in these small communities that makes your heart feel more at home than any place else. Your reverie is interrupted by a faint cry from outside. It's soft but urgent, and it comes again, slightly louder this time. Your sister-in-law emerges from the shadows with a candle lit, her face tense as she looks around the room before focusing on you. "It's Alara," she says quietly, not needing to explain who that is. Everyone in these villages knows of Alara, the village midwife and healer. Without another word, your sister-in-law hands over the candle, its flame casting an eerie glow across her face as she heads out into the darkness. You hesitate for a moment before following, feeling somewhat left behind by the sudden change in mood. The evening air feels colder now, more ominous than it did just moments ago. As you step outside, the cry from Alara grows louder. Something about pain or urgency is etched across her words. Your sister-in-law moves swiftly alongside Alara down towards the edge of the village, where a small wooden shack serves as the cistern for all their water needs. The darkness around this part of the village seems more pronounced than elsewhere, with no windows to let in natural light and only a sliver of moonlight cutting through the clouds. You trail behind them, not sure what you're getting yourself into, but feeling an inexplicable pull towards Alara's distress. Your sister-in-law leads the way down to the cistern's edge, her movements quick but quiet as she reaches for a lantern hanging from a hook nearby. She lights it with a flame from another candle and holds it out in front of them. The light casts long shadows across the ground, revealing nothing at first, until you notice something moving at the bottom of the cistern's pit. It looks like rags or clothing caught on one of the wooden supports below. Alara takes a step forward, her face twisted with worry and pain as she speaks again, this time more urgent. "What is it?" your sister-in-law asks softly before turning to you for an answer, but it becomes clear that there's no immediate response needed from either of them. The urgency in Alara's voice has turned into something else entirely, fear perhaps, or a mix of worry and anxiety. Whatever the case may be, it seems this small crisis is about to become your concern as well. As you stand there beside the cistern, bathed in the soft light of the lantern, the darkness around you feels less like an absence of light and more like its own presence, heavy with secrets that only emerge when least expected. And for a moment, it seems, those small stories hidden within worn wooden crates have nothing on what's about to unfold here by the cistern in this quiet night. The smell of damp earth and moldy straw wafts up from beneath your feet as you stand by the cistern's stone edge, the faint scent of decay mingling with the more pungent aroma of fresh bread carried on the breeze. Your hands are cold from holding a clay jug for so long. It's been hours since you last put it down. The cool metal feels reassuring against your palm as you lean back to survey the cistern's contents, its surface reflecting the pale moon above like a still pond. Shadows dance upon the walls of the nearby storage hut, cast by flickering torches that seem more smoke than flame. You think about how this quiet night has become something of a habit. Every few days you come here to fetch water for the household, often returning with 1 or 2 buckets in tow and your husband's gruff instruction to hurry along. Tonight is no different. You've brought the jug back to its hook near the door, but it seems more effort than usual has gone into lugging it there. The weight of that clay feels heavier now than when you first set out. Maybe it's the weariness in your legs, or perhaps just the accumulation of water inside. You glance down at the nearly full vessel, and wonder if anyone will even notice its contents are a shade lighter than they should be, considering how much has been used for cooking lately. A faint clinking echoes from within the storage hut, probably one of your children rummaging through the wooden crates or making mischief near their father's workbench. The sound draws you in. You consider crossing over to join them, but something keeps you rooted where you are, hands still holding onto that cold clay jug for no particular reason. The air around you cools as night deepens, a slight drop in temperature, nothing more dramatic than what one expects after sunset. You breathe it in, feeling the chill on your skin like an extra layer of clothing, and let your gaze wander beyond the storage hut to where the fields stretch out into darkness. It's been weeks since harvest season ended. Already you can see signs of new growth sprouting from last fall's stubble. A faint hooting sounds through the stillness, an owl perhaps, or maybe just a stray cat making its way home for dinner. The noise breaks your reverie, and with it, your decision to linger here any longer than necessary. You've watered all the plants you need to. Time to get back inside before your stomach protests another night spent standing. You tuck the jug onto its hook more securely this time, a habit formed from years of repetition now second nature. It's not as if it'll stay put on its own, but for some reason today feels like an occasion where small gestures might make all the difference in keeping things running smoothly. Your thoughts start to stray back inside. What will you do first when you get there? Check on your mother-in-law's cooking, likely still simmering away at the hearth, as it has been since she arrived unannounced a fortnight ago. You've grown accustomed to her presence, but that doesn't mean you don't feel its weight in every conversation and shared meal. Your footsteps carry a new quietness tonight. Less energy seems wasted on walking than usual, maybe just tired muscles or perhaps an awareness of how much your body protests the chill seeping into these bones. You push open the creaking door, stepping back into warmth that envelops you like a living thing. Inside, it smells distinctly of cooking oil and onions, unmistakable scents from your mother-in-law's stew simmering on the fire. The air is thick with its savory aromas. Even as you're grateful for her presence in providing meals, there lingers an undercurrent of discomfort whenever she cooks now. Some days are better than others when it comes to eating together. Your stomach growls softly at the thought, a minor protest against being hungry and still standing outside. Time to rejoin your family, put down that jug once more and tend to whatever needs attention within these walls, perhaps listening for stories about their day as you go. The fire crackles on, its warmth spreading through the room like an invisible hand. In front of it stands a woman, your mother-in-law, as always so busy with her own endeavors in this household that sometimes it seems she's more at home here than your actual kin are themselves. She stirs something inside a large pot suspended from a hook over the flames. Its contents bubble and froth, filling the air with those pungent aromas you'd grown accustomed to. Nearby lies an array of wooden spoons, one of which is being used by her now as she expertly turns whatever it is she's cooking. Your eyes wander beyond her to where your own children sit on a bench near the fire, their faces aglow in its warm light. Their conversation seems hushed for once. They glance over at you with that mix of expectation and wariness usually reserved when your mother-in-law joins family gatherings, always unsure how much she'll intrude upon private discussions. As you move closer to join them, her gaze flicks up from the pot's contents toward yours. It lingers there a moment before returning its attention to whatever it is she's stirring. No words pass between you. It feels like an unspoken understanding exists in these moments, that some things remain unspoken but are acknowledged nonetheless. Your mother-in-law continues cooking, moving with purpose as if the quiet expectation hovering between family members didn't exist at all. The fire crackles on behind her, providing a steady warmth and gentle light to this scene unfolding within its circle of comfort. I sat at the wooden table, my hands clasped together in front of me, trying to appear grateful for this warm meal that would soon be ours to share. My mother-in-law's eyes met mine briefly as she slid a steaming plate down the counter towards me, but her expression gave nothing away, no sign of warmth or approval. My husband Godric leaned against the doorframe, watching us with an air of detached interest, his arms crossed over his chest. I felt a twinge of unease at being caught in this tableau of familial tension, my eyes darting back to Mother's stirring pot as if searching for some clue or respite. But she didn't look up. Her gaze remained fixed on the sizzling meat, her focus unbroken by any hint of awareness that we were all watching. It was almost deliberate, this ignoring of our strained atmosphere, as if she'd deliberately chosen to cook and feed us without acknowledging, even for a moment, the underlying unease between us. I remembered when I first came here, full of wide-eyed wonder at her imposing presence in my new home. Her vast stores of knowledge about herbs and potions still fascinated me. Mother was known throughout our village as a skilled healer, respected and feared in equal measure. But over time, our relationship had become complicated. The fire crackled on behind her, providing an unwavering warmth that seemed to defy the chill creeping through my chest. Its gentle light danced across the walls of this small cottage, casting shadows that stretched out like dark tentacles, as if even they were trying to stay hidden from Mother's all-seeing gaze. Godric, she called over her shoulder without turning around, help your wife with her plate. He straightened, striding towards me with a measured smile that seemed forced. I felt my heart sink beneath the weight of his eyes, not because he was being cold or unkind, but because it made him seem so adult, as if all this was just another burden to bear. Thank you, I mumbled, accepting the plate from Godric as Mother handed me a basket woven with dried herbs and wildflowers. Their scent wafted towards me on a wave of expectation, that we'd sit together now and share some semblance of family harmony over our meal. But even in its presence, this didn't seem to have any effect. We sat at the table like three uneasy strangers, I fidgeting with my napkin, Godric watching Mother as if waiting for her next move, and she, still stirring, her hands moving through their familiar motions with a practiced ease that bordered on indifference. It was only when we began eating, silence punctuated by the occasional clinking of spoons against bowls or satisfied sighs from Godric, that even the tension seemed to dissipate slightly. The smell of roasting meat and simmering soup filled our nostrils, driving home the simple pleasures in life. Food on the table, a roof above us, love. Well, complicated family dynamics aside. But this peace was short-lived. As soon as we'd finished eating, Mother pushed back from her chair with an air of purpose that sent shivers down my spine. She began gathering up leftover scraps and utensils in silence, no attempt at conversation or even the faintest acknowledgement of our meal being over, leaving me feeling both relieved and anxious. We should go help father, she said finally, her voice low but unmistakable in its intent. Prepare for tonight's work. The door creaked open as Godric stood to follow mother out into the fading light. I stayed where I was a moment longer, trying to catch my breath amidst this whirlwind of emotion. Our village wasn't just any ordinary farming community. We lived by an ancient calendar tied to the rhythms and cycles of nature, harvests timed with precision according to moon phases, planting seeds when constellations were right in the sky. It was as if we'd forgotten our own world for a more mystical realm where every action held purpose. And Mother's place within this web of tradition and superstition was both revered and feared. Some whispered she had connections to other realms, could communicate with spirits or even shape-shift when need arose. Others simply knew her as an expert in healing, able to coax life from the earth when it seemed barren beyond all hope. I watched them disappear into the gathering dusk, feeling like I'd been left behind on the precipice of a world that was both enchanting and terrifying. Their lives tied up with threads so fine they were almost invisible, while mine remained caught in this precarious dance between reality and myth. The sweet scent of baking bread wafts through the air, enticing your senses and drawing you into the warm kitchen. The fire crackles softly on the hearth, casting a golden glow over the wooden beams that support the low ceiling. You've been standing in this spot for what feels like hours, trying to decide which task to tackle first, the laundry, the cleaning, or perhaps the cooking. As you stand there, your hands rest lightly on the worn wood of the table, feeling the gentle give of the old grain beneath your fingers. Your eyes wander around the room, taking in the familiar clutter and chaos that seems to sprout from every surface like a tangled garden. The smell of bread wafts stronger now, mingling with the faint tang of smoke and sweat. Your gaze falls on the loaves baking on the hearth, their crusts golden brown and inviting. You remember the day you first learned how to make bread from your mother, her patient hands guiding yours as they mixed, and kneaded the dough until it became a supple, elastic mass that seemed almost alive in its own right. Your mind drifts back to those early days, when life was simpler and less complicated by the worries of grown women. Your thoughts are interrupted by the creaking of the wooden beam above you as someone moves through the hallway outside, likely your mother-in-law, come to check on the progress of the day's work. As she enters the kitchen, her presence is announced not just by sound but also by scent, a subtle mixture of herbs and spices that clings to her like a familiar shroud. She nods in approval at the sight of the baking loaves before turning her attention to you, a hint of curiosity in her eyes as if wondering what's holding up your work. "Is everything all right?" she asks, her voice low and soothing, a gentle breeze on a summer day that carries no particular message but simply exists. You nod, trying to focus on the task at hand, while still feeling the weight of responsibility for this small household settle onto your shoulders like a cloak. Your mother-in-law begins to help with the bread, expertly turning the loaves as they bake and adding just enough water to keep them moist without making them soggy. You watch in admiration, remembering how you once tried to imitate her movements, but ended up producing a batch of rock-hard bricks that only laughed at your attempts. As you work together, the conversation turns to the subject of inheritance, a topic that's been simmering on the back burner for months now. Your mother-in-law mentions something about an elderly aunt who's been pestering their family with requests to settle her estate soon. The words hang in the air like a challenge, or perhaps more accurately, a series of challenges, each one waiting patiently to be addressed. Your thoughts begin to wander again as you consider all the what-ifs that attend this conversation. What if your aunt's will is contested? What if she leaves everything to someone other than her family members? The possibilities stretch out before you like an endless landscape, each hill and valley filled with uncertainty. The smell of baking bread fills the air once more, transporting you back to a simpler time when life was less complicated by questions of inheritance or family politics. Your mother-in-law hands you a small basket lined with linen cloth, a gift from her own childhood, she says, when their family would make similar baskets for special occasions. As you take the basket in your hands, feeling its smooth weave and sturdy construction, a memory surfaces from deep within. You're back at your parents' farm, watching as they carefully wove baskets together using reeds gathered from the nearby stream. Your mother's skilled fingers move deftly, weaving in and out of the reed frames with an ease that belies years of practice. The sound of laughter echoes through your mind, a carefree time when life was simple and unencumbered by worry or responsibility. You glance down at the basket still clutched tightly in your hands, feeling its weight and texture like a tangible connection to a more innocent past. Your mother-in-law begins to tidy up the kitchen, her movements economical as she puts away utensils and sweeps the floor with a worn broom that creaks softly against the stone. You watch her work for a moment before turning your attention back to the task at hand, sorting through a basket of fresh vegetables from last night's market. The pile grows steadily in front of you, each carrot and potato carefully washed and laid out like soldiers on parade. The task is monotonous but also strangely soothing, a reminder that even amidst chaos and uncertainty, there are still moments to be savored for their quiet simplicity. Your hands move through the vegetables with practiced ease, separating them into neat piles as you consider all the meals they'll help feed your family over the coming days. Your mother-in-law pauses in her tidying to glance at the growing pile before nodding approval, another small task accomplished amidst a sea of larger worries. As she continues on her way, leaving you alone with your thoughts and the quiet work of sorting vegetables, you can't shake the feeling that there's something waiting just beyond this moment. A series of events or decisions yet to be made, each one carrying its own weight and uncertainty like a heavy burden shared among several people. Your hands continue their steady motion through the pile, separating carrot from potato as if trying to separate sense from nonsense in your own life. The kitchen is quiet now except for the occasional creaking of wooden beams or distant call from outside, a reminder that even within these walls, there's always more than meets the eye waiting just beyond. You pause briefly to take stock of what you've accomplished so far. A dozen loaves baked and cooling on the hearth, vegetables sorted into neat piles for tonight's meal, laundry hanging in the breeze outside to dry. Your mind starts to wander again as you consider all that still needs attention, a never-ending list that seems to grow longer with each passing day. As the sun begins its slow descent toward night, casting long shadows across the room and illuminating dust motes dancing through the fading light, your thoughts drift back to the subject of inheritance. The memories of yesterday's conversations swirl around you like autumn leaves blown about by a gentle breeze, fragile moments that cling to life only for as long as they're remembered. You wonder if it's possible to keep these smaller worries at bay while still tending to the larger issues waiting in the wings. The smell of baking bread lingers on, mingling with the scent of wood smoke and damp earth outside, a subtle reminder that even amidst uncertainty, there are moments worth savoring for their quiet simplicity. As you continue sorting vegetables, lost in thought but not entirely ungrounded, the world seems to slow its frantic pace just enough for you to catch your breath. In this brief lull, anything feels possible. The weight of responsibility lifts ever so slightly. Small tasks are transformed into acts of defiance against a chaotic universe. Your hands move through the pile with renewed purpose now. Carrots and potatoes no longer mere vegetables but tangible proof that even in uncertainty's shadow, life persists with its gentle rhythms. As you sort through the vegetables with renewed purpose, your thoughts drift back to your grandmother's words. A woman who tends her garden is not just tending seeds and soil, she's nurturing life itself. You recall the countless hours she spent in this very same spot, coaxing blooms from the earth, even when winter's chill threatened to snuff out all hope. Your hands move with a sense of reverence now, as if handling fragile treasures rather than mere vegetables. Your mind wanders further back, to the stories your mother used to tell around the fire, tales of women who weaved their own linens from scratch, sewed clothes for entire families on single-hand looms, and cooked meals that sustained them through seasons of scarcity. Your great-grandmother was one such woman. Her hands were said to have been as deft with a needle as they were with a sickle, cutting down the wheat in their fields. You chuckle wryly to yourself, your own hands are anything but deft. The stitches on that last dress you made for your child look like the tangled threads of a spider's web, and don't even get started on the state of your garden during the summer droughts. Your grandmother used to say it was a matter of willpower, that with enough grit and determination, any woman could master these ancient skills. The truth is more complicated, or at least, you've come to realize it over time. The women in your family have always been strong-willed, but also willing to adapt. Your mother used to say that sometimes the greatest acts of defiance were those that acknowledged the limits of one's own power and worked within them. As you finish sorting the vegetables, a faint light begins to seep through the windows, not from any candle or lantern, but from the fire crackling in the hearth. Your husband stirs on his pallet, rubbing his eyes as if awakening from some deep slumber. "How much longer till supper?" he asks, voice husky with sleep. You glance at the cauldron bubbling over the fire, a meager stew of beans and root vegetables that'll have to suffice for tonight's meal. It's not like it used to be. Your grandmother could cook up a storm on scraps no larger than your thumb. You're still trying to master even the simplest recipes, but at least you've got this far. Your husband yawns again, swinging his legs over the side of the pallet as if readying himself for battle rather than dinner. "We'll be late," he says, already knowing what answer he's going to get. You nod. It's not like you're arguing exactly, just acknowledging a fact that's been in place since dawn broke this morning. You'd have liked nothing better than to cook up some proper food for your family, but it's the wrong season for fresh vegetables, and your husband still can't be bothered with fishing. As he heads out into the cold twilight air, you watching from the doorway as he disappears into the darkness like a ghost, you realize that there are times when even the smallest acts of defiance seem impossible. It's then, in moments like these, that you recall an old story your mother used to tell, about how every great river begins with just one drop. That single drop flows across a vast expanse of stone and water until it becomes something greater, but not before being worn down by the relentless currents around it. Your grandmother would nod along as if in agreement, saying that's exactly what life was like for women in their position, always adapting to flow with the tides. Now, standing here at this threshold between day and night, you wonder which river is your own, whether it flows toward defiance or surrender. The wind picks up outside, carrying on its breath a whisper of leaves rustling through winter's skeletal trees, but inside these walls something stirs, a spark that flares like candlelight in the darkness. Your hand instinctively reaches for the wooden spoon beside you, as if needing to steady yourself against some unseen force. There are no grand gestures here, just the small tasks of cooking and cleaning, and caring for family that add up over time into something greater than themselves. The stew is done, it'll be a thin repast, but one that will sustain them all until dawn breaks again. You ladle out portions onto wooden plates, feeling an odd sense of peace settle in as you watch your husband return from his task outside. The look on his face softened by some small mercy or kindness he's received during this short journey. For now, at least, there's no need to confront that great river. Just a quiet moment, suspended between day and night like a candle flame flickering against the darkness. The scent of damp earth and last night's supper wafts through the doorway, carrying with it the promise of a long day ahead. You wake to the sound of your sister-in-law, Alara, stirring in the adjacent loft. The wooden beams above creak softly as she stretches, her movements slow and deliberate after a morning spent helping mother with the chores. You lie still for a moment, listening to the gentle lapping of water against the shore outside. It's not yet dawn, but already the river's presence is a soothing background hum. The weight of your own body presses down on the pallet, its straw-filled mattress softening with each passing night. You yawn and throw off the woolen blanket, feeling the chill seep into your bones as you rise to begin the day. The air in the hut is stale, heavy with the scent of last night's fire, a mix of wood smoke and damp fur. You shuffle over to the hearth, where Alara has already started building up the embers from last night's cookfire. She adds some kindling, carefully blowing on it until the flames crackle to life once more. The warmth seeps into your fingers as you hold out your hands to catch a few stray sparks. The fire crackles and spits as Alara expertly coaxes it back into a warm, golden light. You glance over at Mother, who's already stirring in her chair by the window, an old wooden frame that creaks softly with every move. The early morning sun casts long shadows across the room, illuminating dust motes dancing in its warmth. Mother sets aside the half-woven basket she'd been working on and rises from her seat. She shuffles over to you, her joints a little stiffer than usual, no doubt due to last night's supper, boiled turnips that sat heavy in her stomach. Alara hands her a wooden spoon as Mother reaches for something hidden behind the stack of logs. You watch with mild curiosity as she produces an old clay vessel filled with what looks like dried herbs and scraps of linen. Today, she announces, her voice low but clear over the crackle of the fire, we tackle that nasty wart on your hand. Your gaze drifts to the offending blemish, a small, raised growth near your knuckle. You'd almost forgotten about it in the midst of all this morning's activity. Mother carefully sets aside the vessel and reaches for her basket instead. She rummages through its contents until she finds what looks like an old wooden trap, fashioned from a piece of split branchwood, a crude but serviceable tool. You'll need to hold out your hand, she instructs Alara, who obediently takes your wrist in hers. Your thoughts stray back to the river outside and how it seems to be whispering its secrets through the open doorway. The sun's growing light illuminates the dust motes dancing in the air, a gentle reminder that morning is slowly giving way to day. You focus on the task at hand as Mother begins carefully placing small bits of dried linseed meal around the wart, her hands moving with an economy born from years of practice. Alara holds your arm steady while you watch with mild trepidation as they prepare for what promises to be a rather unconventional treatment. The sound of birds outside, wood pigeons and sparrows in particular, gradually grows louder until it's almost a gentle hum, accompanying the quiet rustle of Mother's hands moving between her basket and your hand. Your gaze drifts upward toward Alara, who's observing with an intent expression, one eyebrow raised ever so slightly as she takes in the scene. The warmth from the fire is comforting, though not quite enough to dispel a growing sense that this treatment won't be the most pleasant of experiences. The scent of linseed meal wafts through the air, pungent and earthy, an unusual contrast to the morning's damp earthiness. You take in a breath as Mother finishes, arranging the last few bits of meal around your wart. First, she explains to Alara, her voice steady over the gentle clucking of the birds outside, "We need to catch us some mice." Alara raises an eyebrow at you. It's clear neither of you has any idea what's coming next. The river's presence in the room seems to fade into the background for a moment, as Mother begins rummaging through her basket once more. Her hands move with practiced ease among the various items stored within, before she produces a small woven cage that looks suspiciously like one of Father's hunting traps, though not quite so crude. "Time we use this," she says to Alara, who frowns slightly in confusion as Mother sets about constructing an improvised bait for their makeshift mousetrap. The recipe comes from grandmother's sister. It involves some rather fragrant ingredients. Alara raises a skeptical eyebrow at the mixture of cheese rind and dried herbs being assembled within the cage, though she says nothing, simply holding out your hand again as Mother proceeds to attach small pieces of bait around its edges. You can't help but wonder what exactly you're getting yourself into with this treatment. Your gaze drifts upward toward Alara's increasingly puzzled expression, before finally focusing on your own arm once more. The fire crackles softly in the hearth, its warmth seeping deep into your bones as Mother sets aside the cage and turns to face you, a mixture of intentness and mild amusement etched onto her features. "Time we waited for our little friends," she announces with an air of quiet confidence that sends a shiver down your spine. As Alara carefully releases your wrist, you're left standing there trying to make sense of the impending ritual before you, which promises to involve captured mice, dried herbs, and rather unusual application methods. As Alara steps back to reveal the array of peculiar items laid out on the wooden table, you can feel your mind struggling to keep up with the sequence of events that's unfolding before you. The mice, 6 in total, are arranged in a neat row at one end of the table, their tiny paws twitching as if sensing the impending doom that awaits them. Next to each mouse lies a small pile of dried herbs, some of which look like they've been gathered from the garden just yesterday, while others appear to be something more exotic and perhaps even unnatural. Alara's gaze lingers on you for a moment before she turns her attention back to the ritual at hand. She carefully selects one of the mice, not just any mouse, but the smallest and most scrappy-looking of the bunch, and begins to expertly tie a tiny thread around its neck. The thread is made from what looks like raw silk, but you can't help wondering if there's something more sinister behind this seemingly innocent material. As Alara works on dressing the mice in their makeshift harnesses, she begins to speak in hushed tones about the ancient art of treating warts with the humble mouse. You see, she explains, her voice dripping with a quiet reverence for the subject matter, the key lies not just in the application method itself, but in understanding the intricate balance between yin and yang energies within our bodies. The words swirl around you like a maelstrom of confusion, each term jostling against the others as Alara weaves her tale. You strain to keep up with her reasoning, feeling your brow furrow into deep grooves as she elaborates on the theoretical underpinnings behind this bizarre practice. The yin energy, that's what you'll find in excess within a wart itself, she declares, pointing at one of the mice's tiny paws. It's stagnant and unbalanced, causing all sorts of problems for our poor bodies. And with that statement, Alara proceeds to tie another thread around the same mouse's paw. As if sensing your growing bewilderment, Alara turns her attention back to you, her eyes sparkling with a gentle warmth, or perhaps it's just desperation. You see, she repeats patiently, as if speaking to someone hard of hearing, the mice are simply vessels for carrying that stagnant yin energy away from the body. Once they're done their duty, well, let's just say it'll be curtains for those little creatures. Her words leave you feeling queasy in a way that has nothing to do with any sort of physical malady. It dawns on you all too slowly, perhaps, that Alara genuinely believes she's doing something good here. The thought sends a shiver down your spine as you watch her take up the tiny mouse from its makeshift harness and begin applying what looks like an unholy concoction to the wart itself. The mixture reeks of something pungent yet curiously earthy, like damp soil on a late spring evening. Alara's deft fingers work it into a paste that almost seems to glow. It's then you notice she's added not just any herbs but something unmistakably red, and what looks suspiciously like crushed gemstone. The smell is overpowering, yet somehow also strangely familiar, as if some ancient memory has been awakened deep within your being. A fleeting vision surfaces of a long-forgotten garden, where Ilara or someone much like her tended to a family's botanical treasures. That recollection vanishes almost instantly, leaving you grasping at the threads of reality with an unsteady hand. The process of treating the wart takes what feels like an eternity, although it might be just minutes in actual time. You can feel your mind whirling through theories about sympathetic resonance and ancient rituals gone awry. As Alara continues to tend to her tiny, doomed charges with a level of devotion that borders on fanaticism, you're faced with the unnerving realization. No matter what actually happens here today, wart or not, this woman is certain she's doing something vital. Her calm determination carries over into every gesture as she works. Even when applying an absurd amount of force to the mouse in question, which sends it squirming and squeaking frantically, Alara remains unfazed, her focus solely on completing the ritual with precision. As you watch this bizarre spectacle unfold, with all its attendant whispers about ancient energies, magical threads, and mice sent forth as unwitting sacrifice, something within your psyche shifts. You're forced to confront a stark truth, that there's far more than meets the eye when it comes to Alara's actions here today. The smell of damp earth and decaying leaves wafts through the air, carried on a faint mist that clings to your skin like a cold shroud. You're standing in the cramped courtyard of Alara's home, surrounded by the familiar sounds of the household. The gentle hum of her mother's spinning wheel, the soft chatter of the other women as they sort and clean the day's gleanings. The air is heavy with the scent of damp wool and the faint tang of ale from last night's supper. As you breathe in deeply, your lungs ache slightly from the chill that still clings to them. You've been up since before dawn, helping Alara prepare for market day, a never-ending task of packing baskets, checking weights and measures, and making sure every item is perfectly arranged for display. Your hands are stained with the blue dye used on some of her wares, and your fingers feel stiff from handling so many delicate fabrics. Alara herself is nowhere to be seen, but you know she'll emerge soon, ready to face whatever demands market day will bring. You're left to tidy up the courtyard, making sure every stone is swept clean and every pot is hung in its proper place on the wall hooks. The weight of your duties settles onto your shoulders like a physical burden, one that's grown heavier with each passing season. As you work, your gaze wanders around the courtyard, taking in the familiar sights and sounds. There are Alara's mother and sister, huddled together over their spinning wheel and chattering softly as they go about their task. The other women of the household move about, busy with various chores. One is sweeping the floor, another is scrubbing a large cauldron in a nearby tub of water. Even the children are here, playing quietly in the corner near the well, their laughter and shouts carried away on the misty air. Your thoughts begin to wander as you work, drifting back to your own household's troubles. Alara's father has been ill for weeks now, and her mother is beside herself with worry. The weight of caring for them all falls squarely onto Alara's shoulders, making every day feel like a never-ending struggle to keep the family fed and clothed. As you straighten up a particularly stubborn wicker basket, your gaze falls on one of the women. She's new in town, having arrived just last week with her husband. You remember hearing that they've come from some distant village, seeking work as skilled artisans but struggling to find steady employment here. She looks tired and pale with dark circles under her eyes, probably due to the long hours spent traveling. You consider approaching her, exchanging a few words of welcome, or perhaps even offering your help in finding her husband's skills any use around town. But something holds you back, maybe just the uncertainty of what to say. Your thoughts drift away from this idea as quickly as they arrived. It's not like you have much time for idle chatter when there are so many tasks waiting. The sounds and smells of the courtyard continue on, seemingly oblivious to your musings. Alara's mother calls out a gentle reminder about getting the market stall ready, while her sister starts humming softly as she continues spinning wool into thread. The children in the corner grow quieter now, their faces pressed together against each other in some shared secret. Your hands move of their own accord, continuing to tidy up and prepare for Alara's departure, scrubbing down pots, sweeping away stray leaves from last night's supper, arranging a few particularly delicate scarves on display. The work is mindless but somehow soothing, allowing your thoughts to wander without feeling like they're accomplishing anything. As you straighten up the stall's awning, one of Alara's father made it himself. Using sturdy oak and carefully woven wicker, you notice something odd. There are fewer women than usual gathered in the courtyard today, their usual chatter replaced by a general air of quiet huddle. You glance around at those who do remain. Alara's mother is sitting on a stool near the well, looking tired but calm. Her sister has finished spinning for now and seems to be engaged in some sort of whispered conversation with one of the other women. Curiosity piqued, you make your way over to join them. The air feels thick with unspoken words as you approach. It's almost palpable enough that you can feel it like a physical weight on your skin. You slow down slightly, sensing there might be more going on here than meets the eye. As you draw closer to the group of women huddled together in the corner of the village square, their whispers grow louder and more urgent. They're speaking in hushed tones, glancing around nervously as if they fear being overheard by unseen ears. You recognize some of them from the nearby cottages: Agnes, who tends to the communal gardens; Edith, a skilled weaver whose hands are always stained with indigo dye; and Mistress Aelfrida, the village elder's wife. They fall silent as you approach, their eyes darting towards you before quickly looking away. It's almost as if they're sharing a secret that only a select few should know, and you've stumbled into it by accident. You clear your throat to announce your presence, but instead of inviting you in with open arms, the women part slightly to create a gap for you. Agnes steps forward, her eyes clouded over with concern. "Ah, good wife. We were just discussing something, if you could help us figure it out." She glances around nervously before lowering her voice further still. "Some of our husbands are acting strange lately." Edith adds a whispered confirmation. "They've been sneaking off at night, sometimes for hours on end. We don't know where they're going or what's got them so riled up." Mistress Aelfrida leans in closer to you, her voice laced with worry and suspicion. "It started after the Lord's visit a fortnight ago," she says quietly. "Some of our men began acting different. Irritable one moment, then withdrawn the next. We've tried talking to them about it, but they just brush us off." The women exchange worried glances before Agnes speaks up again. "We were thinking maybe there's something going on in the village we don't know about. Something that's got our menfolk spooked." Her eyes lock onto yours as if pleading for you to listen carefully and offer some sort of explanation. You nod sympathetically, trying not to seem too intrigued by their mystery. "I see," you say softly. "But what makes you think it has something to do with the Lord's visit?" Edith leans in closer still. "It started after he arrived, when our menfolk began acting like this." She glances around at her companions before focusing on you once more. "We've heard rumors about his castle, that there are strangers living within its walls, not from our village or nearby towns." Mistress Aelfrida adds a whispered confirmation. "Some say they're foreigners with dark magic in their souls." The women exchange uneasy glances at this mention of the F word. Dark magic is something to be feared and avoided, especially when associated with outsiders. The tension among them grows palpable, as if unspoken fears are festering beneath the surface like open sores waiting to burst free. Agnes speaks up once more, "But what can we do? We don't know how our menfolk got involved in all this." You realize that there's something brewing in the village, a mixture of fear and uncertainty, perhaps even conspiracy, but you have no idea where to start looking or who might be behind it. The women glance at one another before speaking in hushed tones about gathering information from their husbands. "We must find out what they're hiding," Edith says firmly. "For the sake of our children and families." Mistress Aelfrida nods vigorously, her voice barely above a whisper. "Agreed. But how?" They won't tell us anything when we ask them directly. Agnes leans in closer still. I think I have an idea, she whispers cautiously. If we're to get the truth out of our menfolk, maybe it's time for some gentle persuasion. The women exchange knowing glances, their faces alight with a hint of mischief and determination. The musty scent of old hay wafts through the air, carrying with it whispers of forgotten conversations and unspoken truths. The women exchange knowing glances, their faces alight with a hint of mischief and determination. You are standing amidst this quiet gathering, surrounded by the familiar rhythms of village life. The thatched roof above creaks softly in the gentle breeze, its wooden beams weathered to a silvery gray that seems almost otherworldly in the fading light of day. As you breathe in deeply, the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves rises up from the packed dirt floor. The women's whispers grow louder now, their words hanging suspended like autumn leaves on the breeze. You strain to catch snippets, but they speak only in hushed tones, sharing secrets that are not for your ears alone. Their laughter is a low, throaty sound that rumbles through the air like thunder on a summer's day. You glance around at the other women present, each one lost in her own world of thoughts and worries. There's Alice with her wild tangle of red hair and hands stained from hours spent kneading dough. Margaret, whose eyes seem to hold a deep sadness that even laughter cannot erase. And Mary, whose usually stern face is softened by the hint of a smile as she leans in close to whisper something in another woman's ear. As you listen, you begin to pick up on fragments of their conversation. Something about Lord Reginald. A whispered rumor quickly hushed away, but not before you catch a few tantalizing words. Secret, stables at midnight, and the blacksmith. The women exchange uneasy glances, as if they're sharing something both forbidden and thrilling. You find yourself drawn to the center of this intimate gathering, where the sound of their whispers weaves together into a gentle hum that's almost like music. It's a soothing melody that carries you along on its tide, making your eyelids feel heavy with fatigue. You rub at them gently, feeling the grit of dust and the tiredness that comes from another long day spent tending to the household chores. Alice leans back against the worn wooden beam, her shoulders sagging beneath the weight of it all. She's been working nonstop since dawn, and the lines etched into her face are a testament to her exhaustion. Her eyes droop towards you now, filled with a mixture of fatigue and amusement as she catches your gaze. For a moment, you're lost in the depths of Alice's expression, those crinkled creases around her eyes, that weary smile that speaks volumes about her day. It's almost as if time itself has slowed down to let this fleeting instant linger on, suspended between one breath and the next. Then Margaret shifts slightly, breaking the spell. "It's time for dinner," she says softly, standing up from where she'd been seated cross-legged on a straw mat at the edge of the gathering space. The women begin stirring, rising like ghosts from their places around the room to help with preparations in the adjacent kitchen area. The air fills with clinking pots and pans as they scurry about, preparing for the evening meal that will soon be served. As you follow them into the kitchen, your ears catch on a new sound, the soft tinkle of silverware being sorted from dishes, accompanied by Mary's gentle muttering to herself. Mary stands at the hearth, carefully arranging an assortment of wooden spoons and clay whisks in neat rows alongside a stack of ceramic plates. "Lord Reginald comes for dinner tonight," she says quietly, her back turned toward you as she works. Her words hang suspended like autumn leaves on the breeze before rustling off into nothingness. As you watch Mary at work, you notice something peculiar about her technique. The way each item is carefully placed so that they nestle snugly together in their assigned spaces without any gaps or overlaps to speak of. It's almost as if she has a natural affinity for order and organization, one that makes even the most mundane tasks seem somehow more purposeful. You feel drawn towards this small act of routine amidst all the quiet intrigue surrounding Lord Reginald, your mind drifting back to Alice's words earlier about what they knew but hadn't dared say out loud. Now you find yourself lost in thought once more as Mary continues sorting utensils with an attention that is nothing short of reverent. You are standing at the edge of this domestic scene, kitchen, hearth, wooden spoons and clay whisks neatly arranged alongside rows of ceramic plates, completely absorbed by Mary's quiet dedication to order. It feels like eavesdropping on a secret you're not quite privy to yet, though something whispers in your ear that it has nothing to do with grand conspiracies or hidden truths, but rather the very small and seemingly insignificant tasks we all undertake daily. Mary finishes her task and turns toward the others gathered around her. "Is everything ready?" she asks softly, scanning each face for any sign of dissent. For a moment, there's an expectant hush as everyone looks to Alice to respond. Her nod comes almost immediately after that brief pause, but it carries with it more than just agreement. A hint of reassurance perhaps, or even warning, though you're not quite sure what underlies this subtle communication between friends. The women begin moving towards the doorway now, their footsteps echoing softly against the wooden beams as they make their way toward dinner. You find yourself walking alongside them without any particular purpose in mind, except to be close enough to hear more of their hushed conversations, and perhaps even catch a few stray words or phrases that might shed light on Lord Reginald's secret life. The air outside has cooled slightly, carrying with it the scent of damp earth from nearby fields. You breathe deeply as you follow Mary toward dinner, feeling your eyelids growing heavier by the minute in anticipation of sitting down to eat after this long and tiring day spent helping Alice around the house. Your footsteps slow a little now that you've reached the edge of the village proper. Fewer people are out here compared to those milling about inside homes or working on tasks elsewhere. As night begins falling over the quiet hamlet, Mary's pace quickens ever so slightly as she leads everyone toward their evening meal. You hear the first hints of dinner preparations being prepared in several nearby homes. Dishes clinking against earthenware plates, wooden spoons tapping gently against clay vessels containing steaming hot food. Each sound adds a new flavor to your anticipation, until you're ready for nothing more than sitting down with friends around an open flame that promises warmth and companionship. Finally, the village square is in sight. You feel Mary's firm grasp on your arm guiding you toward the nearest table set out beneath the flickering light of candles. For a moment there, time seems to pause as everyone gathers round, the sound of utensils clinking against plates now growing louder, alongside gentle murmurs between friends. Your stomach growls softly in response to all this noise and anticipation for dinner. But something else catches your attention even more than the promise of warm food. Alice's knowing glance at you across from where she sits, those eyes sparkling with mischief as if sharing a secret just between herself and Mary, while Margaret leans back into her chair looking worried, or is it relieved? You feel drawn toward this table now set up under candlelight amidst friends gathered in the quiet evening calm. It might be dinner time for Lord Reginald too, though whispers don't reveal anything further about his plans beyond what's already been spoken of earlier today. The air still carries hints of damp earth from nearby fields. You breathe it all in as your eyes wander around this circle of friends gathered round a table set beneath flickering candlelight. Your stomach growls softly, reminding you that dinner awaits, though something else draws you deeper into their company, Alice's knowing glance at you across the table. Time seems to pause for just an instant, or perhaps it never truly did in the first place. As everyone settles around this meal together under quiet evening sky, there's no telling what secrets might be shared over dinner tonight. The scent of salted meat and simmering vegetables wafts through the evening air, carried on a gentle breeze that stirs the leaves of the nearby willow tree. The sky above has deepened to a rich blue, with just a few wispy clouds scattered across it like cotton tufts blown from a distant field. You're sitting at the edge of this small gathering, your back against the rough bark of an ancient oak tree that's been weathered to a silvery gray by centuries of wind and rain. The wooden planks beneath you are cool from the afternoon shade, but the air has grown warm enough for you to feel the soft give of the earthy soil below. Your stomach growls softly as you gaze out at the spread before you, a meager feast made up of scraps and leftovers from this week's markets. A haunch of salted venison is the centerpiece, its surface slick with a mixture of lard and vinegar that glistens like polished stone in the fading light. To one side of the gathering, Alara's husband, Thrain, stands tall and imposing behind his chair, his arms crossed over his chest as he surveys the assembled company. His eyes flick toward you occasionally, but for now they seem fixed on some distant point beyond the trees, where the village meets the open fields. To your left, a trio of women are busy ladling portions onto wooden trenchers and passing them down to those seated at the far end of the gathering. One of them, it's Alara's sister-in-law, Brynja, catches your eye as she hands you a steaming bowl filled with what looks like scraps of boiled vegetables, a chunk of stale bread on top. You take hold of the wooden handle and lift the trencher to your lips, feeling the weight of the ceramic spoon in your hand. The first bite is a revelation. Flavors are muted, but there's something almost comforting about this simple food, as if it speaks directly to some primal part of you that doesn't care for fancy sauces or spices. As you eat, the sounds around you grow louder, laughter and chatter rising from the group like a gentle tide. In particular, Alara is holding court near the center of the gathering, her words dripping with excitement as she recounts some story or other about their daughter's latest escapade at the village schoolhouse. You listen for a while, letting the sounds wash over you, snatches of conversation carried on by waves of laughter and chuckling, an occasional shout from someone outside where children are running wild in the fading light. The fire nearby crackles softly as it settles into its evening slumber, casting flickering shadows across the ground. With your belly slowly filling up with the simple food, you begin to feel a certain relaxation creeping over you, not just because of the meal itself, but also from being surrounded by people who have known each other for so long. Even Thrain seems more relaxed now that he's been sitting in one place for a while. His eyes still flick toward you occasionally, but at least they're no longer fixed on some distant point beyond the trees. The atmosphere is convivial, or would be if it weren't also slightly oppressive. After all, everyone knows what's expected of them here. to share their news and troubles with one another in a spirit of community that underpins this very tight-knit village society. It's almost as though you can feel the weight of expectation bearing down on every individual present. Alara is laughing now, but also casting anxious glances toward her sister-in-law, who seems lost in thought. Brynja finally looks up from whatever it was she was staring at and catches your eye across the gathering. For a fleeting instant, their gazes lock. You sense something passing between them that's hard to put into words, perhaps a mix of solidarity and shared understanding, or possibly even something more complicated like tension or unease. As for you, with bowl still in hand, there's no reason not to continue eating at your own pace. There'll be time enough later on to talk about what Brynja was thinking when she caught your eye, or maybe they won't mention it again, until the evening is over and everyone has retired to their individual homes. The darkness outside seems to deepen as you finish your meal. A few fireflies start flickering around the gathering, adding an ethereal quality to the atmosphere. You're still aware of the presence of others nearby. Brynja now sits quietly at Alara's side, while Thrain continues watching over everyone with an air of quiet authority. After dinner, when it comes time for the company to break apart and make their way home through the gathering darkness, you find yourself wondering about the family dynamics here. Specifically, how do they handle disagreements or arguments within their tight-knit little community? What exactly happens if there's a disagreement over something like property rights? Say, who gets to decide what crops are planted on certain land? These aren't necessarily questions that anyone else seems concerned with right now. As far as you can tell, everyone is content to just enjoy each other's company in the fading light. But as someone sitting at the edge of this gathering, observing from a slight distance, and not being part of it directly yourself, these kinds of concerns do keep creeping up into your mind like persistent whispers. Of course, there are many aspects of village life that you're still trying to get used to. Things like where exactly people sleep, you've seen some sort of huts in the near distance, how often meals are shared, and what happens when someone gets sick or injured. All these tiny details add up over time, but they also create a rich tapestry for your imagination to weave into whenever you find yourself daydreaming about this place. And that's exactly where we'll leave things for tonight. Suspended within the gentle rhythms of village life, feeling the textures and scents around us with an almost instinctive connection. As we lay in our modest bed, surrounded by the creaky wooden beams and the faint scent of drying herbs, I couldn't shake off the feeling that the day's events had stirred up within me a maelstrom of emotions. The sun was setting over the village, casting long shadows across the thatched roofs as the women began to stir from their own daily routines. Outside our small cottage, the air was alive with the clucking and squawking of chickens, while the pigs in the nearby sty oinked loudly, awaiting their evening scraps. The sounds were a gentle hum, like the soft rustling of leaves on an autumn breeze, familiar, comforting, and reassuring. I felt my eyelids grow heavy as I listened to the symphony of village life, the rhythm of which was both soothing and exhausting at once. It's funny how one can feel so tired after a day spent in the midst of such simple tasks, tending fires, cooking meals, mending clothes, and caring for children. But tonight wasn't about rest. It was about stories, tales that would be spun around the fire by women who had been up since before dawn, their fingers working nimbly to prepare the evening meal. My mother-in-law, Godiva, sat beside me on our pallet, her hands busily kneading dough for tomorrow's bread as she chatted with my sister-in-law Elgiva. As I listened in, the conversation turned to news from a neighboring village, where two families had been embroiled in a long-standing dispute over land and inheritance. The tale was one of love, betrayal, and tragedy, the kind that would be repeated around campfires for generations to come. The Smiths thought they'd gotten the better of it, Godiva said with a knowing glint in her eye, but now their son's gone off to fight in some far-off kingdom. They claim he was promised land as his due, but those Cunninghams won't give an inch. Elgiva nodded sympathetically. I and that young Smith lad is likely no match for the Cunninghams' cunning lawyers. Mark my words, they'll find a way to wriggle out of giving him a single field. As I listened, transfixed by the tale, I couldn't help but feel a pang of familiarity with the situation. After all, hadn't our own family struggled over such issues? The recent dispute between our clan and that of the nearby Redmonds had been a hot topic in these very village streets for months. But as we talked on into the night, the fire burning low now, casting flickering shadows across the walls, I realized just how precarious life was here. Land disputes, family feuds, and struggles over inheritance were all too common. They could erupt at any moment, leaving families torn apart or ruined by greed. In this world of medieval peasants, survival depended on being adaptable, resourceful, and strategically positioned within a complex web of alliances and rivalries. A single misstep, such as my own husband's recent decision to challenge the Redmonds' claim to our disputed land, could bring ruin upon our family for generations to come. And I was caught in the middle of it all, wife to one man, sister-in-law to another, daughter of a respected elder. Yet vulnerable and powerless against the whims of fate. The weight of responsibility settled heavy on my shoulders as I lay there, surrounded by the murmurs of village gossip and the dying embers of our fire. The night air was filled with the sweet scent of honeysuckle wafting through an open window, but even its gentle perfume couldn't dispel the sense of unease that had taken hold within me. As I drifted off to sleep, lulled by Godiva's soothing voice and Elgiva's contented sighs, I knew tomorrow would bring its own set of trials, for in this world of medieval peasants there was no escape from conflict, no respite from the tangled web of family politics. And as the darkness closed around us like a shroud, I couldn't help but wonder, what would be my place within it all? The dampness of the thatch above your head seeps into your bones like a chill on a winter's night, as you lie there too exhausted to stir, yet unable to relax in this darkness. Your eyelids feel heavy, weighed down by the fatigue of another long day's labor. The straw beneath you is lumpy and uncomfortable, but it's better than sleeping on the dirt floor. You've grown accustomed to its rough texture over the years, a reminder that even when life gets comfortable, it's never truly soft. As you lie there, your mind begins to wander back through the day's events. The sounds of the village still linger in your ears, the clang of hammering on metal, the chatter of children playing outside, and the occasional bark of a dog breaking into the silence. Your stomach growls with hunger, reminding you that dinner was long overdue when you finally stumbled out of the hut, too tired to even muster up an appetite. The memory of your father's passing still lingers in the back of your mind like a faint scent on the breeze. It feels as though only yesterday he was standing by the fire, his eyes clouded with age but still full of life and wisdom. You recall the way he used to tell stories about his own childhood, the way his hands would weave intricate patterns in the air as he spoke. You remember how you felt that day, a mix of sadness and relief, knowing that he was finally at peace after all those years struggling with illness. It's been several days now since he passed on, but it feels like an eternity since your mother died under similar circumstances just last winter. The loneliness can be overwhelming at times. Your thoughts are interrupted by the sound of snoring from outside the hut, your husband, likely still awake even though his breathing is so steady. You smile to yourself as you realize he's probably too exhausted to sleep any more than a few hours, before being roused again for another night shift tending to their small plot. As the silence deepens within and without, you feel a creeping sense of unease settle in. It's not just the memory of your father or the weight of responsibility that has been placed upon you. It's something more primal, the feeling of being alone in this vast world with no one truly to turn to for comfort. You try to push these thoughts away, letting them fade into the darkness like wisps of smoke on a summer breeze. Your body relaxes as your breathing slows down once again. You let yourself sink deeper into the straw bed, allowing its lumpy softness to envelop you in a fragile sense of security. Your ears pick up the sound of crickets chirping outside. It's almost midnight by now. The village has long since retired for the night, leaving only the occasional hoot or howl from some stray animal to punctuate the stillness. Your husband stirs beside you, and you feel his hand brush against yours in a gentle reassurance. You're startled out of your reverie as he begins to whisper softly into the darkness, something about tomorrow being market day, and needing to make sure they get the best spot near the fire so their wares will sell well. His words fade into meaningless sounds as you focus on his breathing once more, lulled by its steady rhythm. As your mind drifts further away from reality, memories begin to surface, small ones that have been buried beneath the weight of responsibilities and hardships. Like the time you accidentally set fire to a patch of their crops when you were still learning how to use the flint for lighting, or how your father used to tell you stories about his own childhood in the north. The recollections swirl together, forming an unsettling sense that there's something left unaddressed, perhaps even buried beneath all these layers. Yet with each passing moment, it becomes increasingly difficult to grasp onto any single thought long enough to give it attention. You're suspended between worlds, caught up in memories of what has been and the weight of responsibilities yet to come, torn asunder by a sense that there's still so much left unsaid, perhaps even unburied. The darkness closes in around me like a shroud, heavy with secrets and unspoken truths. I try to recall the events that led my father to his untimely demise, but my mind is a maelstrom of fragmented images. The flickering candles casting eerie shadows on the walls, the sound of footsteps creaking beneath our wooden floorboards, the scent of damp earth wafting through the open window. As I remember now, it was late and I had been lying awake for hours, my heart racing with every snap of a twig outside or creak of the old house settling into its foundations. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie silver glow over the thatched roof of our small cottage. My mother lay beside me, her breathing slow and steady, but I knew she was awake too, could sense it by the way her fingers twitched ever so slightly on my shoulder. And then there were the noises. At first, I thought they came from outside, a dog barking in the distance or an owl hooting its mournful cry. But as the sounds grew louder and more insistent, I realized they were coming from within our own walls. My father had been acting strangely for days, restless and on edge, always looking over his shoulder as if he feared being watched. Now those same footsteps echoed through my mind like a litany of guilt, a soft thud followed by the creaking of wooden planks beneath heavy feet, then another pause before the sound was repeated once more. My heart racing, I threw off the covers and crept out of bed, stumbling towards the narrow staircase that led down to our small cellar. The air in the kitchen felt thick with tension as I made my way past the fire pit where my mother still slept, curled up like a child in her chair by the hearth. My father's door was open, ajar, just an inch or so, and from within came the faint rustle of fabric against skin. "Father," I whispered into the darkness, trying to keep my voice steady. The creaking sound ceased abruptly, leaving only an oppressive silence in their wake. My heart sank like a stone as I took another step forward, peering into the depths of our cellar storage space. That was when I saw it, his back hunched over and still against the far corner of the room. I tried to call out again, more loudly this time, but my voice caught in my throat like a fishhook. My father's body seemed frozen in place, not moving or reacting, as if trapped beneath some unseen weight. I stumbled forward, tripping on the last step and landing hard upon the cold stone floor beside him. My eyes scanned his face for signs of life. They were pale, deathly so, but otherwise unremarkable except for a faint line creasing his brow just above his left eye, as if he had been struggling with something in his final moments. A strange numbness took hold within me then. I couldn't cry out or scream, only watch as my father's chest stilled beneath my gaze. It was over before it began. No grand finale, no heroic struggle against death itself. Just an endless, empty void where once there had been a beating heart and warmth of human life. I stood there frozen, my mind struggling to comprehend what I had witnessed. The stillness in my father's chest seemed to seep into me, a cold dread that spread through my veins like ice water. My body felt numb and heavy, as if it too was weighed down by the grief of losing him. But even amidst this paralyzing sorrow, I knew I couldn't stay there forever. The house would need tending, food must be prepared for tomorrow's meal, and most urgently, my father needed to be buried before nightfall. Our village elder had warned us about the dire consequences of leaving a body unburied overnight. It was said that spirits roamed free during this time, causing mischief and woe among the living. I pushed aside the thought, however painful, and steeled myself for what lay ahead. Gathering my thoughts, I set out to prepare my father's body for burial. My hands moved on autopilot as I wrapped his limbs with linen cloth, tied them tight at the elbows and knees, and placed a coarse woolen shawl over his chest. But even in death, he looked different. His features seemed softer, more serene than they had during life. A faint smile played on his lips, as if he were savoring some secret just only known to him. My heart felt the pang of loss all over again. I would miss this gentle soul who had always been there for me. I carefully lifted my father's shrouded body onto a wooden pallet and began to haul it across the floor towards the door, but found myself faltering at every step. Each creaking board beneath our feet seemed amplified in the heavy silence of the house. I couldn't help wondering if he would ever truly rest now that his life had been extinguished. The night air hung thick with an eerie stillness as I carried my father's body outside, under a sky painted crimson by the setting sun. A sick feeling twisted within me, everything seemed so ordinary. The fields lay barren and cold, devoid of any signs of spring growth, just like our village, in shock from the sudden loss. I stumbled upon the gravesite near the edge of our property, where my mother had been buried a few winters prior to her own untimely passing. A new grave awaited us now, an unmarked one that still felt raw and untouched by time or memory. I laid down the pallet beside it, feeling like I was surrendering a part of myself. Before this moment, death's presence loomed more as an abstract threat than an actuality that would soon be mine to confront firsthand. But being here now, facing my father's still form in the cold darkness, made me understand its stark reality. Life slips away unannounced, leaving behind only emptiness and memories we cling to like shadows. A sense of determination gripped me as I prepared to leave him for eternity. This was just a parting. He wouldn't be far from us now that his spirit could roam free among the others who'd gone before us in this very land. But still, an unbearable hollowness gnawed within my chest. My hands moved on their own as I covered the pallet with earth and small rocks to keep predators away. A faint memory of our village's funeral rites flickered through my mind. How a lone drummer beat out a somber rhythm while we sang and mourned for our departed kin, but those were distant echoes now. With every shovelful of dirt I threw onto the grave, it seemed like an unbridgeable chasm was growing between us. He who'd once held me close when storms raged outside and had always been there to offer words of comfort in times of hardship, was slipping further into the darkness with each passing moment. It wouldn't be long now before he truly left our lives behind, leaving only shadows where warmth had once dwelled for a while longer at least. The scent of wood smoke wafts through the air, carrying with it memories of warmth and comfort from a day long past. You've spent what feels like an eternity by the fire, watching the flames dance across the hearth as they reduced last night's leftovers to naught but ashes and embers. The gentle crackle has lulled you into a state of near sleep, your eyelids heavy with fatigue but still refusing to close. Outside, the world is dark and quiet, save for the occasional hoot of an owl in the distance or the soft rustling of leaves in the gentle night breeze. Inside, all is peaceful, the fire's warmth having chased away any lingering chill from the day's labors. Your body feels heavy, weighed down by the exertions of a long and arduous day. Your muscles ache with a dull throb that threatens to engulf you at any moment, but for now, the gentle heat seems to be holding it at bay. You shift positions slightly, adjusting your weight onto one hip as you try to find a comfortable spot on the cold stone floor. The uneven surface digs into your side, making you wince with each movement, and you're forced to settle back into stillness once more, any further change in position too great an effort for tired muscles. The fire's warmth seeps deeper into your bones as you sit there, a soothing balm that slowly works its way through the weariness. You begin to feel it spreading from your shoulders down to your fingertips, thawing out the icy grip of fatigue on your very core. Your gaze wanders around the dimly lit room, taking in the familiar contours of your surroundings, the patchwork quilt hanging over a makeshift bed frame, the wooden beam that supports the roof above, and the large cauldron suspended from its own hook, still bearing remnants of last night's meal. You feel the weight of exhaustion settle upon you once more as you consider all that needs to be done in the coming days. Supplies must be gathered, food prepared, and chores attended to, a never-ending cycle of labor that seems to swallow up every spare moment. But for now, there is no need to think about these things, not with the fire's warmth holding sway over your tired body, and the peacefulness of the night lulling you into a state of torpor. The shadows cast by the flickering flames seem to grow longer and darker as time itself seems to slow down. You let out a small sigh, feeling it escape from deep within your chest, barely audible above the soft crackle of the fire. In this moment, there is only stillness, darkness, and warmth. The air inside is thick with the scent of wood smoke, and baking bread wafting through the narrow window slits high up on either side of the room. It's a smell you've grown accustomed to over time, a constant reminder that despite your exhaustion, life goes on outside these walls. Your thoughts begin to wander back to the events of the day, the long hours spent in the fields under the hot sun, watching as crops withered and died from lack of rain, or rather, what little there was. Your hands feel dry and cracked at the memory, but for now, they're content to simply rest. Your gaze drifts back down to your lap where a small wicker basket holds remnants of last night's meal, cold, congealed meat wrapped in stale bread, and some wilted greens that refuse to cook properly. You pick up one of the cold joints, breaking off a piece with your fingers as you contemplate what might have been if only it had rained just once more this season. The weight of disappointment settles upon you like a shroud for crops lost, food spoiled, and a future uncertain. Your jaw clenches in frustration at the thought of all that could have been done differently, but even those thoughts are too much effort for now. You let your head fall back against the wall behind you as the warmth seeps deeper into your bones, feeling it push away the last vestiges of fatigue and disappointment. In this quiet moment by the fire, there's only stillness, no room for what could have been or tomorrow's worries. As your breathing slows to match that of the fire's gentle crackle, you let yourself be consumed by the peacefulness surrounding you. Your eyelids grow heavy once more as the warmth envelops every inch of your tired body. It's almost. Your mind trails off into nothingness as the room fades away from view, a fleeting vision of stone walls and flickering flames replaced by darkness, quiet, and an all-consuming sense of rest. You let go of all thoughts and cares with each passing moment, lost in the gentle dance between firelight and shadow. Time itself becomes irrelevant as you sink deeper into slumber's grasp. Your breathing slows further still, a gentle ebb and flow that matches the soft hiss of the dying embers on the hearth. In this peaceful state, nothing exists beyond your own quiet contentment. The room around you dissolves away, no longer seen or heard, but instead felt through some deep-seated sense of connection to its very fabric. You feel yourself settling into a space where time itself loses meaning and there's only stillness. Your final thoughts fade out as the warmth, darkness, and quiet envelop every inch of your being. You're gone, lost in the peaceful expanse that lies beyond awareness. And so you sleep on, oblivious to all else but the soothing presence of firelight, its gentle crackle lulling you deeper into a slumber from which nothing can stir. As you drift further into slumber, your mind begins to wander through half-remembered dreams, echoes of a life long past. The crackle of the fire grows softer still, its warmth seeping deeper into your bones as the flames die down to embers. In this state, you are not aware that your body has begun to stir, a subtle tension building in your muscles as you shift in bed. Your fingers twitch beneath the covers, flexing and releasing in a gentle rhythm, like the quiet pulsation of a pulse in time with the dying fire's last breaths. It is this small movement, almost imperceptible to anyone but yourself, that carries you further from awareness into a realm where dreams are woven from threads of memory. Your mind slips free of its moorings, allowing long-forgotten skills and habits to resurface like creatures rising from the depths. Your fingers dance across the bedding, weaving an unseen pattern as your thoughts become disconnected from their anchor in waking consciousness. A hand moves without volition, tracing a slow path over your thighs, then pausing at the crease of hip and waistline where fabric gathers tight against skin. Your body has begun to tell you something, whispers through a secret language that requires no words or explanation. The motion stirs within you an echo of daily routines long abandoned, a reminder of kneading dough by hand in the village bakery, the feel of cold morning air on bare hands as they worked yeast into bread dough. The memories surface not in sequence but as disjointed impressions, like leaves torn from their branch and scattered to drift aimlessly. Yet as your fingers move more purposefully now, an awareness stirs that was not there a moment before. The gentle pressure of fingertips against palm, the rough texture of calluses built up over countless cycles of kneading. Your thoughts take on a new coherence, less fluid than they were in slumber but clearer in their aim. You feel your way towards something left behind, an absent task or forgotten object whose significance is as familiar to you now as it was at the moment when awareness first slipped away. With every beat of this inner pulse, remembrance floods back, the need to prepare bread for tomorrow's baking, a household chore delayed until too late in the day. Your fingers, they had been doing something all along, weaving and repeating patterns without your conscious participation, guide you toward what has been left undone. Their touch grows deliberate now, pressing into fabric as if searching for seams that hold together more than just a garment, like threads stitching memories to their proper place within consciousness. In this quiet reverie, tasks lost in time reappear, recalled not by logic or reason, but through the tactile language of fingers on skin and fingertips tracing worn patterns. Your movements have become fluid once more, less spasmodic, though no less insistent as they draw you toward awareness now. The warmth has seeped out from under your body. Fire embers are cold ash scattered about a hearth darkened by night's shadow. Your waking world is waiting for the return of light and life. The gentle pressure, the careful tracing, it all serves only to hold at bay the realization that must come with dawn. Responsibilities unfulfilled in this forgotten sleep will be no less weighty when morning returns. The thought gathers itself into a small pool within your mind, gathering quiet dread as you acknowledge what tomorrow holds. Your fingers pause on the bedding, weighing and settling upon an answer to some question posed by the still dark world outside, one that only time and light can clarify. They come to rest at last in a position of repose, yet it is clear now. Whatever the task or forgotten object may be, the hand that holds you captive will not wait much longer. In this threshold state, the world beyond your bed hangs suspended as morning approaches, an unseen hour when duty calls and reality demands attention once more. Your cheek rests against the cool stone of the fireplace, warm embers still glowing from last night's cooking. The air inside your small cottage is heavy with the scent of baking bread and the faint tang of smoke. You've been up since dawn tending to the daily chores, milking Bessie, collecting firewood, and feeding the chickens. Your hands ache slightly as you rub them together in front of the fire. The soft glow from the embers casts a gentle light on your face, illuminating the faint lines etched into your skin from years of hard work. You blink slowly, feeling the tiredness creep back in, like a familiar fog rolling in with dawn's chill. The room is quiet now, except for the occasional tick and creak of the wooden beams as they settle. Your thoughts wander to the bread dough you mixed earlier today. Flour made from rat bones, it's a special recipe passed down through generations. Some might say it's not worth the effort, but your family has always insisted on using this particular type of flour for its unique texture and flavor. The thought prompts a small smile as memories of your mother teaching you how to knead flood back. The dough was sticky at first, refusing to come together like Play-Doh in your hands. Your mother had patiently shown you the trick, adding just enough water, then folding it over and under until it came into shape. It was a calming exercise, almost meditative, the repetitive motion of hands working on the dough as if coaxing life out of it. As the fire crackles softly behind you, your mind drifts to the finished loaves waiting in the pantry, their crusty surfaces adorned with intricate patterns from being baked directly on hot stones. The aroma wafting from them is unmistakable, a mix of yeast and earth that fills your nostrils every time you walk into this cottage. You push yourself up, gently releasing your cheek from its resting place against the stone. Your joints creak slightly as you stand, stretching the tiredness from your limbs like unraveling a threadbare fabric. You move to where the loaves are stored on wooden shelves, simple hand-carved containers with intricate carvings that seem more decorative than useful. Each loaf is nestled in its own woven basket, surrounded by an array of cheeses and dried fruits left over from last night's meal. The air around you thickens slightly as you open a small compartment at the back of one shelf to retrieve a handful of coarse salt. It clings to your fingers like damp sandpaper. Salt was a luxury in times past. Now, with trade routes established between villages and towns further inland, it's not so scarce. Your family still conserves it for special occasions, but on ordinary days like today, when the morning sun shines through the windows without much fuss or excitement, you can afford to use it lavishly. You sprinkle a pinch of salt over the bread loaves while thinking about your day ahead. Tending Bessie will require some extra care due to her recent illness. Then there's the weaving for your sister-in-law, whose husband is set to return from his trading expedition soon. Your mind wanders through these tasks as you make mental notes. It's not so much planning, but rather mentally adjusting the fabric of daily life. The soft light inside begins to seep out into the morning air as windows are opened wider for ventilation, letting in a mixture of fresh and stale scents. The cottage is filled with this blend as your chores prepare for the day ahead, wood smoke mingling with damp earth from last night's rain, the faint tang of salt on bread lingering like an invisible ghost. Time moves quietly now, not rushing towards anything specific, nor slowing down to appreciate what's around you in particular detail. It simply flows forward at its own gentle pace, a quiet river moving over smooth rocks that don't stir up too much noise or fuss. Your hands stop their idle task of sprinkling salt and rest on the wooden counter beside them, feeling for a moment like an object rather than an active participant in your life. You glance around you once more at the warm space filled with familiar objects, taking it all in as if seeing it anew through someone else's eyes. The world outside has its seasons of change. Inside these walls, routine provides solace and order against the whimsy that storms may bring or unexpected events. In this still moment, just before another day begins to unravel its threads into life, a small comfort settles over you like a well-worn cloak, knowing every task is done with care and each step forward will be guided by what's familiar. Your breathing slows further as the room's warmth wraps around you once more. You lean back against the counter, letting your hands fall limp in their own time, releasing their hold on the wooden surface like a bird leaving its perch for morning flight. As you sink further into the warmth and comfort of your makeshift bed, your mind begins to wander back to the day's chores. The memory of kneading dough made from flour milled from rat bones comes flooding back, a task that seemed daunting at first, but had become almost meditative by the end of it. You recall the way Master Baker, God rest his soul, would speak of the importance of using locally sourced ingredients to give bread its unique flavor. He'd tell tales of how he'd traveled far and wide to find the perfect blend of grains for his recipes, always searching for that elusive combination that made each loaf a masterpiece. And then there was the time Master Baker introduced you to the secret ingredient, flour milled from rat bones. You remember feeling a mix of horror and fascination as he explained how it added depth, richness, and a hint of gaminess to the bread. He'd shown you how to carefully crush the bones into powder using a mortar and pestle, and then sifted it through a fine mesh to remove any lumps or impurities. The task itself had been arduous, your hands cramped from hours of kneading the dough, but the end result was worth it. The bread had risen like magic, with a delicate crust that shattered into crumbs as you broke into it. It was almost magical. You snuggled deeper into the warmth, feeling the fatigue seep out of your muscles. Your thoughts drift to Master Baker's wife, Mistress Alice, a kind soul who'd taken you under her wing when you first arrived in the village. She'd taught you how to make candles from tallow and lard, showing you the art of shaping them into elegant forms that would illuminate even the darkest corners of your cottage. Your mind conjures up images of Mistress Alice expertly stirring a cauldron of simmering soup on the hearth, her hands moving with precision as she added herbs and spices to create a flavor so divine it'd make even the most skeptical of eaters swoon. You recall how, after finishing each task, she'd hand you over to Master Baker for further instruction. The old baker would take one look at your work, nod in approval or sometimes frown in disappointment, his way of saying that there was room for improvement. But it never felt like criticism, more like a challenge from someone who truly cared about seeing you grow into your role as a medieval peasant wife. Time seems to warp and bend around you now, carrying you back through the seasons, spring's fresh air, summer's warmth, autumn's harvests, and winter's snowflakes. You're no longer in the present moment. Instead, you find yourself transported back to that fateful day when Master Baker handed you a small sack containing 3 pounds of rat bone flour. Today, he said with an expectant grin, we learn how to make bread from this very special ingredient. Your mind replays the process as if it were yesterday, measuring out precise amounts of water and yeast, adding pinches of salt, and kneading that peculiar dough until your arms ached. You recall Master Baker's encouraging words. The most essential thing in baking isn't precision or patience, it's understanding the ingredient's unique character. It was more than just bread making. You realize then that life itself is about embracing imperfections and transforming them into something new, beautiful, and nourishing. Now your breath slows even further as the room seems to grow quieter around you. Your eyelids begin to droop. Visions of flour-sprinkled countertops and soft dough on hands start to blur. Master Baker's voice whispers in the distance. Never forget, a skilled baker listens not only with her ears but also with her heart. Sleep claims you like an old friend returning for yet another visit, carrying memories and lessons learned into dreams that weave together fragments of past days spent learning from these medieval masters of their craft. The gentle warmth of a summer evening seeps into your bones, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and fresh hay from the nearby fields. The air is heavy with the sweet perfume of blooming wildflowers that line the village path. You lie on your back in bed, feeling the softness of the straw mattress beneath you as you watch the shadows dance across the walls. As you breathe in deeply, the sounds of the night begin to filter into your peaceful reverie, the distant hooting of an owl, the rustle of small creatures scurrying through the underbrush, and the occasional bark of a dog from a nearby household. Your eyelids grow heavy with sleep's promise, but not yet ready to surrender. Your stomach protests gently, reminding you that it has been hours since last night's meager supper. The thought sends a twinge of hunger pangs through your belly, which is soothed by the warmth spreading from the small fire crackling in the hearth. You recall asking Agnes earlier today about making some soup with leftover vegetables and scraps of stale bread. Perhaps it would be ready when you woke up tomorrow. Now, as the night wears on, your mind begins to wander back to an errand you were supposed to run this afternoon, searching for a lost recipe for medieval dye. The village elder's granddaughter, Alara, had mentioned passing down from her mother an ancient method of creating vibrant blues and reds using local plants. But where did she hide the written instructions? You vaguely remember walking along the riverbank, asking questions of market vendors and elderly women tending their gardens. As you drift between wakefulness and slumber, your hands instinctively recall holding a small pouch containing seeds from various flowers. Alara had told you they were crucial for achieving different shades in the dye. Your fingers seem to remember the rough texture of those seed pods against your skin, an odd detail that lingers like a half-remembered dream. Your body relaxes further, letting go of tension accumulated during the day's tasks. Tending to your family's garden plot, assisting with spinning wool for winter garments, and attending the village council meeting. As you release each thought, it dissolves into nothingness, leaving behind only the sensation of warmth on your skin. Your breath slows down in time with the crackling fire outside, creating an odd harmony between the external world and the calm within yourself. Outside, crickets begin their evening serenade, a soothing melody that carries you deeper into relaxation. The air thickens further as darkness gathers, and the distant chimes of a nearby church bell softly echo through the night. The softness beneath your body shifts as you adjust position ever so slightly, your weight sinking into the straw mattress with an almost imperceptible sigh. It's been hours since last evening's meal. Still, there is something comforting in knowing that Agnes will prepare another simple but nourishing supper for when you rise tomorrow. Your eyelids grow heavier now, resisting any attempt to stay awake or think further about the lost recipe or your tasks tomorrow. Your stomach has long since given up protesting its emptiness, It's time to let sleep claim you once more. The world outside is dark and still, but within yourself, a quiet peace settles over all thoughts of dire recipes, household chores, and family duties. As you surrender fully to the warmth spreading through your body, memories from past days begin to merge with present moments like fragments in a tapestry being woven anew each night. Sleep claims you once more, carrying lessons learned into dreams that weave together snippets of experience gained during these medieval years spent learning alongside artisans masterful in their crafts. Your breathing slows even further now, so gentle and shallow it becomes almost imperceptible among the sounds of crickets chirping outside your window. In this peaceful stillness, you let go entirely, allowing sleep to envelop every thought, leaving behind a softness that wraps around each part of your body like a warm cloak. Sleep claims you once more, carrying memories of village life into dreams where threads from past days and nights are woven anew. As you sink deeper into slumber, your mind begins to wander through vivid landscapes of rolling hills and bustling village markets. The scent of fresh bread wafts through the air, carried by a gentle breeze that rustles the leaves of nearby trees. You feel the softness of woolen fabric beneath your fingertips as you help weave baskets for the upcoming harvest festival. In your dreams, memories of past seasons blend together like threads in an intricate tapestry. The taste of ripe berries on a summer's day is followed by the sweet sound of children laughing and playing in the village square. Your eyes flutter open to find yourself standing amidst the bustling market stalls, surrounded by friendly faces that smile warmly as you greet them. "Good morrow, Alara," calls out Alice from the nearby bakery, her hands covered in flour as she holds aloft a freshly baked loaf. "What brings you here today?" You return her greeting with a wave of your hand, feeling a sense of belonging among these familiar faces. Your own stall is just ahead, piled high with skeins of wool and bundles of herbs that smell like the forest after a spring rain. Your name is called out once more, this time by Avelina from the local dyeing shop. "Alara, we've received word that Lady Isabella's favorite cloak has gone missing," she says, her voice tinged with worry. "The one made of crimson wool, remember. We need to re-dye it before the harvest festival." You nod in understanding as Avelina passes you a small pouch containing precious madder root and a vial of lichen-infused water. This is where your day will begin at the dyeing shop, with the noble Lady Isabella's cloak hanging precariously over the large vat. As dawn breaks outside, you awaken from your dream to find yourself standing in front of the hearth, surrounded by half-finished tasks that hint at a busy morning ahead. Your stomach growls softly, reminding you it's been hours since last night's dinner. A quick trip to the nearby well for fresh water and then back inside to start breakfast, perhaps some bread with cheese or cold leftovers from yesterday. While waiting for the porridge to simmer on the fire, your thoughts wander once more to Lady Isabella's missing cloak. What if it was stolen? Or worse still, accidentally damaged in the dyeing process? Your mind begins to churn through possible solutions as you pour milk into a wooden bowl and add some stale bread crumbs. "Good morrow," calls out your husband Godric from outside, carrying a bucket of fresh water slung over his shoulder. The animals need tending today. His hair is mussed from the night's sleep, but his eyes sparkle with warmth as he gives you a gentle kiss on the cheek before heading to the fields. You watch him go, feeling a flutter in your chest. Marriage has brought new responsibilities and routines into your life, ones that fill you with purpose but also challenge your creativity. Your hands begin to move automatically, stirring the porridge while your mind replays conversations from last night's dinner table. The village elder had been telling tales of his travels as a young man, stories about trading goods in far-off lands and meeting people who spoke languages unlike anything heard here before. It sparked an idea within you. Perhaps there was more to dyeing cloth than met the eye. The recipes passed down through generations were full of mystery, each one containing secrets that had been lost over time. You glance at Avelina's pouch on your workbench, still there from last night. Madder root and lichen-infused water. But what if you added something else to create a new shade, or perhaps even revive an old one thought long forgotten? The possibilities dance before you like autumn leaves blown by the wind, beckoning you towards discovery. Yet today is already packed with tasks. Lady Isabella's cloak must be re-dyed and Godric needs help in the fields. You sigh softly as your attention shifts back to reality, setting aside the puzzle of ancient dying secrets for now. But within this peaceful stillness, a small seed has been planted, one that will soon sprout into an adventure that might change everything. The morning sun climbs higher outside, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, and you know it's time to begin your day anew, tending to tasks both mundane and grand. The scent of baking bread wafts through the thatched roof, carrying with it the promise of a mid-morning meal. You recognize the familiar smell of freshly baked loaves from your own mother's oven back in the village, and for a moment, you're transported to a time when life was simpler. Your hands are still warm from holding the wooden ladle over the fire earlier this morning, scooping out the day's porridge for breakfast. You recall how the grains seem to shift and swirl beneath your touch like living things, their gentle resistance a comfort in the quiet darkness of dawn. Now, as you stand by the window, watching the sunlight filter through the latticework of wooden shutters, you feel the weight of the day ahead settling onto your shoulders. Outside, the village is stirring to life. The sound of hammering on metal from the blacksmith's forge carries over the gentle murmur of conversation in front of the nearby bakery. The scent of freshly baked bread continues to waft through the air, making your stomach growl with anticipation. Your thoughts turn to the tasks ahead, churning butter for tonight's supper, checking the cheese mold on the counter to ensure it's progressing as expected, and perhaps, if you're lucky, stealing away a few minutes to work on that intricate embroidery pattern you've been trying to master. Your fingers twitch at the memory of running thread through the needle, feeling the soft give of fabric beneath your fingertips. You glance around the small cottage, taking in the familiar contours of the room. The worn wooden stool by the fire, the woven baskets lined up against one wall like sentinels guarding a treasure trove of household treasures. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke and baking bread, but there's something else, something almost imperceptible, yet unmistakable to your nose. You sniff again, trying to place it, old leather, wood polish. It takes you a moment to remember that today is market day in the next village over. Your husband, Godric, went early this morning to secure their spot at the ale stand, and no doubt picked up whatever fragrances he might have encountered along the way. You're about to set down your task list for the day when something catches your eye, A small note stuck between two of the shutter's slats. You hadn't noticed it before, but now that you do, the piece of parchment seems almost glowing with importance in the morning light. Curiosity piqued, you dislodge the note and examine it more closely. It's written in your husband's scrawl, "Wife, meet me by the big oak at noon." The message is brief, but something about its brevity sends a small thrill through you. What could Godric want to discuss so urgently? Perhaps he's found some new investment for their land or needs help with a problem from the village elder. The possibilities begin to spin in your head as you refold the note and tuck it into your apron pocket, where it joins an assortment of small items, keys, scraps of fabric, and a half-used spool of thread. You feel a sudden pang of hunger for more than just bread. Suddenly, everything seems possible. The morning sun continues its steady climb through the thatched roof above you, casting dappled shadows across the room as it chases away the night's chill. For now, at least, all is right with your world, and whatever Godric has in store for you by the big oak will have to wait until after lunch. Time stretches out before you like a blank scroll waiting for ink. What will this day bring? Will you find yourself tending a new batch of herbs or helping a neighbor with their harvest? Perhaps, just perhaps, you'll be able to squeeze in that embroidery pattern and make some headway on the intricate stitches. The sun was already high in the sky when your husband, Godric, emerged from the east fields, his face creased with sweat and his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. You watched him from the doorway of our small cottage, a mix of relief and worry swirling in your chest as he drew closer. As he approached, you couldn't help but notice that something was off about him. His usual rugged confidence seemed to be missing, replaced by a nervous energy that made his eyes dart back and forth like a trapped animal. You felt a shiver run down your spine as he caught sight of you standing in the doorway, his gaze lingering on yours before quickly looking away. "Ah, wife," he said gruffly, wiping the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "The day's been eventful." You exchanged a skeptical glance with your daughter, Ilara, who was watching from behind you, her small face pinched in concern. "What did that mean?" Eventful could be anything from finding a new source of water to being chased by bandits, neither of which would normally warrant such a serious tone. Godric trudged over to the well and dipped his cup into its cool waters, taking a long drink before speaking again. "I need to tell you something," he said finally, setting down the cup with a clatter that made Alara flinch. Your mind was racing now. Had someone been hurt? Had there been news from your family in town? But as Godric's eyes locked onto yours once more, his expression told a story of its own. It spoke of secrets kept and troubles carried, like the weight of an unseen burden slung across his back. "What is it?" you asked softly, trying to keep the alarm from creeping into your voice. Godric hesitated for what felt like an eternity before finally speaking in a low tone that sent shivers down your spine. "I found something out there," he said, glancing around as if he feared being overheard by unseen ears. "Something I shouldn't have." Alara let out a small gasp and you exchanged another worried glance with her. What could it be? Was someone dead? Had Godric stumbled upon dark magic? But instead of answering your questions directly, Godric's words sent the air thickening around you like autumn fog. It was on his body, where they found him. The thing is, he wasn't supposed to have been there. Your mind reeled as realization dawned. Who had he? And where exactly did there refer to? But it was clear that Godric didn't want to discuss the topic further, not even with you. A heavy silence settled over us all like a blanket, punctuated only by the occasional chirp of birds from outside and Alara's steady breathing. You tried to make sense of what had just been said, but found yourself grasping at straws. Godric's words hung in the air like unspun wool, refusing to unravel their tangled mystery. Finally, after an interminable stretch of tense silence, you spoke up. Tell me everything. Godric rubbed his eyes as if willing away memories. It didn't work. You'd find out soon enough what everything meant. But for now it seemed that your simple country life had become anything but that. You stood there, your eyes fixed intently on Godric, who was still rubbing his temples with one hand while attempting to maintain a stoic expression. You'd seen him frustrated before, but never like this, as if the very air around you had become thick and suffocating. What do you mean by everything? He asked finally, his voice low and measured, though laced with a hint of wariness. You swallowed hard, your mind racing through all the possible scenarios that could have led to him being gone for so long. I don't know what's going on, you admitted, trying to keep your tone even despite the growing sense of unease inside you. And I want to know. Godric hesitated, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape route or a way to change the subject. But there was no avoiding this now, he knew it too. Very well, he said at last, taking a deep breath before speaking in a rush. I've been away on business, that's all. Something with my uncle, you know how he is, always getting into trouble and expecting me to bail him out. You'd known Godric had a complicated relationship with his uncle. The man was notorious for being reckless and selfish, often causing problems in their small community before moving on to the next place he'd exploit or invest in. You raised an eyebrow. But what were you doing? You pressed. And why didn't you tell me? I've been worried sick about you. Godric's expression softened slightly. He looked almost guilty, though that might be a stretch for someone as proud and self-reliant as him. It was something with the Lord, he said quietly, choosing his words carefully. I won't lie to you, it wasn't just business. I'd gone out of my way to help him in some matters, hoping to improve our standing at court. Court politics had long been a thorn in your side. Godric's family was considered minor nobility, but they were hardly influential enough to get them an audience with the king or his advisors on their own merit. Still, you'd hoped that by marrying him and moving into this larger household, things would change not just for yourselves, but also for Godric. Did it go wrong? You asked carefully, sensing there was more to tell than he let on. His eyes dropped. The fingers of one hand began fidgeting with the hem of his tunic. Not exactly, he muttered. But I think there's been a misunderstanding. Your mind whirled through all sorts of possibilities. Had Godric gotten himself into debt or worse? Was it something to do with one of his relatives? You knew some people who'd say that whenever someone spoke about an uncle in hushed tones and furrowed brows, they were usually discussing infidelity, but surely. Godric, you said firmly now. Just tell me the truth. There was a moment's hesitation before he nodded curtly, then his words spilled out like water from a cracked jug. My mother has. She'd rather not discuss it either way, I think, but there are whispers, rumors that my uncle had an affair with someone high-ranking at court. A lady in waiting or such like. You felt your heart sink as the implications became clear. Godric's family was indeed in trouble now, and you suspected this went far beyond mere gossip. A woman who could be pregnant, you asked gently, already knowing what his answer would be. He nodded again once twice, trying to appear nonchalant but clearly ill at ease. I shouldn't have gotten mixed up with it, he admitted gruffly. It's not for me to meddle in the Lord's affairs or those of my own uncle. This was far more than just a simple family matter. You sensed that Godric had become entangled in something much bigger and potentially disastrous, involving court intrigue, scandal, and who knows what else. You tried to make sense of it all while processing your feelings. Fear for yourself and your future, worry about how this would affect their household standing at court, which was precarious as it stood, concern for the lady involved if indeed she was pregnant. And still there was something bothering you, a nagging suspicion that Godric wasn't telling everything. Wait, you said suddenly, halting him with an outstretched hand. There's more to this story. His eyes flickered, he knew it too. Tonight you've traveled through a land of mist-shrouded memories, where the whispers of ancient secrets lingered like shadows on the walls of forgotten castles. The distant fires of forgotten traditions still flicker in your mind's eye. The art of curing warts with mice, the mystery of our Lord's secret life, and the tale of two families bound together by a shared history as tangled as the roots of an ancient tree. As you navigated this winding path, the tide of time pulled at the shores of your imagination, leaving behind only echoes of what once was. Beneath these disparate tales lies a single thread, the intricate web of lives lived in shadow of powerlessness. Each story whispers secrets about how women and men endured, struggled to survive, and found ways to resist in a world where their voices were often silenced. The faint scent of wood smoke lingers on this journey, carried by the tides of history. If you'd like to keep exploring, you can gently tap like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey. And if you feel awake enough, leave a comment and share where in the world you're listening from, though the night may be dark. Your presence here is not forgotten. As you drift toward sleep, let the details sink below the surface of thought. Let the dark and quiet take over, like the ebbing tide on a moonless night. Your mind will unwind, carrying the echoes of these stories with it into the stillness ahead. And when morning comes, as it inevitably does, remember that memory is not a burden to be shouldered, but rather a whispered promise from one generation to another, a reminder of lives lived and love endured beneath the patient gaze of time.